This man lost everything. Gang Yu was a hero, but he watched his comrades be defeated right before his eyes by the worst villain in the world. Even after being captured, the villain managed to escape. He killed Gang Yu's brother, a prison guard, and freed all the prisoners. Gang Yu had nothing left. That same day, the prison manager appeared with a mission, Lucullus Prison. On the first underground level are the villains who endangered entire cities. Deeper down, those who threaten nations. Even further below, the ones who nearly destroyed continents. And at the deepest level, the monsters who plunged the entire world into chaos. They are free, but they haven't escaped the prison yet. Gang Yu was a hero, but he set one condition. In this world, heroes don't kill villains. But now, that will be different. Gang Yu's mission is simple: eliminate every level of the prison. So the executioner began his revenge. The sound of destruction echoes as we see an entire city in ruins and flames. Amidst it all, our hero appears, worn out, gasping for air, and covered in wounds. He's on top of the villain who has finally been defeated after a tough fight. But the white-haired man, even on the ground, starts laughing and says he already knew. He then glances sideways with a cynical and provocative smirk. Looking at a fallen girl, he says the hero is different from those other useless weaklings, and the scene shows several bodies revealing how many people were defeated there. The protagonist gets angry, but the villain tells him to just shut up. As he's being choked, the enemy asks to be killed, saying only the hero is worthy of killing him. But the protagonist refuses, saying with hatred that no, he won't be the murderer. With that, he tightens his grip on the villain, remembering a promise he made to his team. He says he promised that justice would be served and that the villain would be punished by the law. But deep down, he regrets it, thinking he should have killed the bastard right then and there. The scene changes to a news report announcing the capture of the villain who terrorized the world. And with a final gavel strike, it's announced that he has finally been sentenced for everything. Surrounded by armed soldiers, the villain's sentence is finally declared. He has been condemned to death. It's revealed that a power-suppressing device was placed on him, but he still wears a small smile. With that, he's locked away on the 5th basement floor of Lucullus Prison, a place for dangerous villains. Changing scenes, the hero watches the news and grinds his teeth upon learning that some heroes died. Several of his comrades were gone, and their joint funeral was already being organized. With a very sad expression, he hears that the ceremony will take place tonight. Fed up, he turns off the TV just as the government was thanking the heroes for their service. At that moment, a voice calls his name, Gang Yu, breaking the silence in the room. It was a prison inspector who warns him that he should be in bed resting instead of watching TV. Our protagonist then explains that this is his brother, Gang Ho, an officer at Lucullus Prison. He calls his brother's name, preparing to vent his feelings. Anguished, he begins to say that he knows what he should have done but didn't. With his eyes glowing with rage, he screams that he should have killed Huang himself. But his brother tries to calm him down, reminding him that he promised his comrades he wouldn't do that. And in a memory, a heroine says their job is to save people, not to kill. In the flashback, the heroine said they couldn't kill because even villains have the right to a trial. But one of his comrades questions this, asking what would happen if they ended up dying because of it. Even so, she insists and makes everyone promise not to kill anyone no matter the situation. The protagonist listens to it all in silence with a very serious expression, processing the promise. Back in the present, he tells his brother that, in the end, he agreed with what she said. He explains that people must be sentenced by the law and that officers like his brother carry it out. At this, his brother reveals that Huang will be executed next week and that he himself will be there. He says the protagonist has already done his job as a hero and now the rest is up to the officers. Even with his brother's insistence, our hero continues to wear a look of concern and uncertainty. Then, his brother extends a hand and calls for him to go say goodbye to their teammates. The scene shows mourning letters and a public protest with people shouting for the villain's death. And at the funeral, the two brothers pay their respects, and then a week passes. A huge crowd gathers at the memorial to bid farewell to the heroes who died in battle. The day of Huang's execution arrives with him being transported in a containment box. But it's revealed that on that very same day, our protagonist's brother was murdered. In shock and crying, our protagonist wonders why all of this had to happen. We are told that the criminal who should have been punished by the law ended up surviving. Meanwhile, his brother, who was just a simple officer, was the one who ended up being killed. Completely devastated, he sits there on the floor, mourning in front of his brother's altar. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, asking if he is Gang Yuseo, breaking the silence. He looks up and sees a woman approaching, saying it's been a long time. She introduces herself as Se Yoon-jo, the director of Rookulus Prison, and asks if they can talk. With a look full of suspicion, he stares at her, trying to understand what she wants. She then hands him a tablet with a video ready to be played on the screen. The hero is confused, not understanding anything, and asks her what it is. The director then reveals that it's the recording of what happened during Hwang's execution. In the video, the villain appears all tied up and restrained, being led by several guards. With a cynical smile, he calls out to one of the guards who was our hero's brother. He comments that the guard looks like Gang Yuseo and asks if he's his brother. He continues to taunt, asking if he became a guard because he has no powers and who is the older one. The protagonist's brother remains silent for a moment, ignoring all the villain's provocations. But the villain asks the protagonist's brother something. He asks how it feels to take someone's life. The protagonist's brother doesn't understand, so the villain explains that he is also an executioner. At this, the villain says he bets he's killed people before and asks what it feels like. With a smirk, he answers himself that for him it's a very easy feeling. The hero's brother is shocked and repeats softly, wondering, "Too easy?" The prisoner then explains that a simple touch of his finger makes people pop like soap bubbles. But the guard retorts angrily, saying that for him, no, it's not easy at all. He yells that he feels a horrible guilt even when executing scum like him by just pressing a button, and it's revealed that he suffers from horrible nightmares because of his job. In a memory, a prisoner stares at him and says that deep down he's a murderer just like them. The prisoner's blood-soaked face laughs, reinforcing that he's no different from the criminals. Back in the scene, he confesses that the prisoners he executed haunt him in his dreams. The villain then questions why. Despite all this, he continues to work there. The guard says that someone has to do it and that he's just doing his duty as an officer. With everything ready, they prepare to begin the execution of the prisoner, Sung Won Hwang. The hero's brother then asks the villain if he has any last words, but the guy ignores him and goes back to taunting. So the guard announces that the execution will begin. With their fingers on the buttons, a countdown starts from the number 3. The count reaches 1, and all the officers press the buttons at the same time. With that, a very bright light flashes, indicating the electric chair has been activated. Back in the present, the protagonist watches all of this on the tablet, completely horrified. The director then explains to him that at the exact moment of that execution, all the power in Rookulus Prison simply went out, plunging everything into darkness. The guards panic, asking about the blackout and the prisoner. But the protagonist's brother seems to already know what's going on, saying he expected it. We are told that an EMP attack hit the facility, and the villain escaped, saying only he could kill him. Seeing the imminent danger, the hero's brother screams at the top of his lungs for everyone to get down. But it was too late, and a blast of power hits them head-on, throwing all the guards away. Amidst the smoke, a desperate guard screams into the radio, urgently requesting backup. He tries to report again that the prisoner broke the device, but his words are cut off. Suddenly, the villain appears behind him with a sinister smile on his face. The guard's face starts to swell up bizarrely as he screams in pain. With a terrifying laugh, the villain says that it looks like a pop enjoying the situation. And in the blink of an eye, the officer's body explodes, splattering everything red. Our protagonist's brother watches it all, completely shocked by the horrific scene. The villain then approaches him, the sole survivor, and says he has a theory. He guesses he's the older brother and asks with a mocking tone if he's right. Blinded by rage, the guard gets up with his baton in hand, screaming and charging at him. But the villain stops the attack with a single hand, breaking his arm effortlessly. With a broken arm, the guard falls to the ground screaming, completely defenseless against the enemy. The white-haired man then brags, saying he knew he had won his bet. Even broken, the officer says the villain deserves to be punished by the law for his crimes, but the prisoner just gives a slight smirk, showing he couldn't care less. With his last bit of strength, he yells that justice will be served, calling the villain a monster. But the prisoner retaliates mercilessly, making the officer's body explode into 1,000 pieces. In the end, all that's left of him is his cap, which falls to the blood-soaked ground. With a smile, he says it's better to ask Gangyu if he won the bet. Back in the present, our protagonist finishes watching the video completely frozen in shock. The director then continues, saying that the situation in the prison is even worse now. She reveals that the EMP attack ended up releasing all the dangerous prisoners from their cells. And to make matters worse, all of them are without their power-suppressing devices. The good news is that they prevented the escape, but many officers are trapped inside. Furious, our hero asks who was responsible for launching the EMP attack. But the director replies that they are still investigating and don't have an answer. She apologizes for having to make such a request right at his brother's funeral. And then, she officially invites him to suppress the riot at Rookulus prison. Without hesitation, our protagonist replies that, of course, he accepts, but on one condition. The director remains there, serious, waiting to hear what he has to say on the matter. With his eyes glowing red, he says he'll only go if he can do it his way. The scene then cuts to a flashback with him remembering what his comrades had said. In the midst of a riot, prisoners were trying to break down a gate desperate to get out. He remembers the rule that heroes save people and that they shouldn't kill, but the memories continue. And he also remembers that his brother was a prison officer. He recalls his brother saying that only the law can sentence and that those who carry out the punishment are the executioners. At that moment, an explosion sends several prisoners flying. The other inmates are left completely stunned, not understanding what had just happened. Then a silhouette emerges from the smoke, putting all the criminals on high alert. Gang Yu decides he won't go in there as a hero, but as something very different. He then introduces himself as Gang Yu Seo, their new officer and executioner. The prisoners are shocked, recognizing the famous name of the hero standing before them. They then wonder why the hell a hero would be wearing uniform. One of the prisoners transforms into a monster and says mockingly that it's a pleasure to meet him. At that, several other inmates also turn into beasts, screaming for him to die as they charge forward. Gang Yu remains standing calmly even with all those monsters rushing toward him. One of them then comes in full force, already throwing a super strong punch in the protagonist's direction. But Gang Yu counters with an even stronger blow, blasting a hole through the prisoner's chest. The impact is so absurd that it throws all the other prisoners away, leaving them no chance to defend. In an instant, several bodies appear on the ground, leaving the survivors completely terrified. The inmates can't believe it, wondering what the hell just happened there. He then adjusts the mic on his collar, preparing to make a general announcement to everyone. With a firm voice, he tells all you pigs to shut up because he has an order from the government. He begins to explain that all the prisoners from solitary confinement on the ground floor through all the basement levels, which were filled with dangerous criminals, and all the way to the top floor where his late brother's cap was found, will be his target. At that moment, Huang greets him, happy that he has arrived. The villain seems very excited by Gong Yu's presence, but the protagonist has other plans. With a look of vengeance, he announces that his brother's duties will now be carried out. The prisoners are confused by the announcement, asking if he's talking about an execution. Outraged, they start cursing at Gang Yu, unable to believe what they're hearing. One of them then glares at the protagonist and asks if he's there to kill them all, but the protagonist coldly replies that they themselves have taken countless lives without mercy. One of the inmates defends himself, shouting that he hasn't killed enough people to deserve this. But it's revealed that the guy named Khalida murdered 12 people in cold blood. Another prisoner says he's killed fewer people he has fingers on one hand. Except that Psycho was a dismember, and the other was a cruel child. At this, the whole crowd gets agitated, screaming for lawyers and talking about their rights. Gang Yu just watches the chaos, looking completely displeased. In the midst of the confusion, a green-haired prisoner named Gu Wanchoi keeps to himself. He notices that Gang Yu is distracted, and thinks this is the perfect opening for him. With that, he starts gathering energy, preparing to make a full-powered escape. A bluish aura explodes around him as Gang Yu stares down the crowd. Gathering all his power, the prisoner shouts that he's going to escape this prison right now. But Gang Yu interrupts everything, punching the ground with a dark and terrifying energy. Startled, all the prisoners freeze, unable to comprehend the force of that blow. He then turns to the crowd of criminals and announces he's giving them a choice. The first option is to put their devices back on and wait for their execution in their cells. The second is to die right here at his hands, leaving all the inmates terrified. But one of the prisoners finds it all ridiculous and starts mocking Gang Yu. He then turns to the others and says that fighting is obviously their best choice. The guy argues that since they're going to die anyway, it's better to fight to the end. With a smile, he says the terms of the negotiation make no sense for them. But the protagonist warns that this isn't a negotiation, but his last drop of mercy. Seeing he's serious, the prisoners begin to panic, not knowing what to do. Out of fear, one of them even says he'll put the device back on, surrendering on the spot. But the rebellion leader shouts for everyone to hear, using a strange power to get their attention. At this, all the inmates turn towards him, waiting to hear what he has to say. He then tells everyone that Gang Yu is just one man and can't handle all of them together. The leader boasts that he's killed a hero before with teamwork. With this, the other prisoners get fired up, realizing they might have a chance. He then encourages the crowd, telling them to charge forward and seize their freedom. But Gang Yu stares at him, saying he must be the trash the director mentioned. In a flashback, the director explains that the prisoners of Ruculus are divided by threat level. The ground floor, for example, holds over 300 dangerous serial killers. The first basement has over 100 criminals who endangered entire cities. In the second basement, there are more than 30 who threaten the whole country with their crimes. The third floor holds 10 individuals who left an entire nation vulnerable. And on the fourth, there are 5 maniacs who posed a threat to an entire continent. On the top floor was Huang and 2 others who nearly destroyed the entire world. The director warns him that he won't have to face everyone, just some of them. She continues her explanation, saying the prisoners have a very strange peculiarity. The scene shifts to the second basement, where a group of religious fanatics appears. And with a bizarre smile, 2 women tell someone to confess all their sins. The scene takes us to the fifth basement, where Huang finds a mysterious woman sitting. He approaches her with a power core in his hand, curious about her presence there. It's explained that they don't get along, and the villain jokes that he didn't know he'd have company. With an evil smile, he says he can now have some fun killing until Gang Yu arrives. But the director warns that things are different on the ground floor, where the situation is more organized. She explains that all the prisoners on that floor are united by a single man, a leader. And then she shows a photo of the man, revealing the rebellion leader's identity. His name is Hilaisen, and he has the power to strengthen his allies with a simple shout. Back in the present, Gang Yu remembers that he attacked a hospital and killed 8 people, but Hilaisen corrects him on the spot, saying with a smile that the number was actually 10. With a psychopathic look, he explains that the heroine he killed was pregnant with twins. Hearing this, our protagonist falls silent, pure hatred etched on his face. He then activates his communicator and calls for the director, preparing for what he's about to do. Gang Yu asks how resistant the prison is, and she assures him the structure can withstand anything. With that confirmation, he says that he won't need to hold back at all, but the rebellion leader thinks it's all a bluff, doubting Gang Yu's power. He taunts him, saying the protagonist barely did anything on his team and only got Huang by luck. With a malicious smile, he threatens that they'll send him to the same place as his friends. With that, he uses his power and shouts to strengthen everyone, releasing a red aura. The other prisoners get excited instantly, feeling the extra power they were receiving. The leader then brags, feeling an overwhelming strength he's never had before. With a look full of hatred, he prepares to lead the attack against our protagonist. He then gives the order and sends everyone forward, yelling for them to get Gang Yu. But the protagonist strikes back instantly with a punch that unleashes a blast of dark energy. The blow lands a direct hit, disintegrating several prisoners with absurd and lethal power. The survivors fall to the ground in terror, and the leader is left speechless, completely in shock. The scene shows dozens of bodies on the floor, and the man screams, wondering what the hell that was. Suddenly, a dark and sinister energy begins to manifest around Gang Yu. He then lunges forward again with surreal speed, ready to finish off the rest. And with a stomp, he cracks the ground, showing that the next attack will be worse. The dark energy explodes with full force, releasing a wave of power that shatters the floor. Outside, the entire prison structure begins to shake from the force of the impact. In a cell, a prisoner with a mask starts to tremble with fear, feeling the vibration. His eyes widen, completely terrified by the power he felt from a distance. In the middle of the mess, the leader screams in desperation, wondering if that was really Gang Yu. Lying on the ground, he looks around scared, not understanding what the hell was happening. Then our Gang Yu floats in the air with tentacles of dark energy flying everywhere. It's revealed that he has activated a new power, preparing to enter the battle. The leader panics and orders his men to stop Gang Yu at all costs, screaming. With a closed fist, he concentrates all the energy into a single point, finalizing Mode 1. In an instant, the tentacles lunge forward, piercing all the prisoners in front of him. The inmates' bodies are thrown into the air, all cut in half. Sliced in two, the rebellion leader stares at the scene, unable to believe what he's seeing. In his final moments, he says that this can't be real before fading away completely. And in the end, the bodies of all the prisoners fall to the ground as Gang Yu watches. He floats over the mountain of corpses he himself created, showing no emotion. Over the communicator, he coldly announces that all ground floor prisoners have been executed and informs them he is now heading to solitary confinement, his next target. Looking at the pile of bodies, he wonders how many he killed to get here. He questions if it was dozens or hundreds as his hand burns with dark energy. The scene shifts to solitary confinement where he finds 2 more prisoners and offers them a choice. He warns them to either put the device back on or die right there without a second thought. One of the inmates gets furious, tells him to go to hell, and charges right at him. But the protagonist fights back instantly, remembering the warden said there were about 300 inmates on the ground floor. The other inmate watches in terror, seeing his partner defeated in the blink of an eye. Scared, the guy gives up immediately and yells that he'll put the device back on. Our Gang Yu then throws the device on the floor and tells him to come get it if he wants it. The prisoner approaches with his hands outstretched, begging him to hand it over, but it was a trap. The guy screams that he won't do it, unleashing a purple power. With a yell, he fires a blast of energy, trying to catch the protagonist by surprise. He then starts laughing, asking what kind of idiot would put the device back on. Gang Yu just watches, remembering one of the villains he faced in the past. It's explained to us that a member of the Equity had pitted those without physical type powers. In the flashback, the villain has said that those who fight from a distance will never feel the pleasure of crushing someone. Back in the present, Gang Yu wonders if the feeling the inmate is experiencing is ecstasy. And with one punch, he crushes the guy's head, saying it feels just like cracking an egg. After finishing off the last one, he walks to a panel and presses the button to go down. The door opens with a noise revealing Gang Yu's silhouette to a new prisoner. The masked guy is startled, and the protagonist says he figured there was a reason for all the commotion. He then faces the prisoner, saying that he was the one responsible for all of this. With a cold look, Gang Yu asks if it's been about 3 years since they last saw each other. It's revealed the man is Chuck Fielder, a cannibal who asks if the protagonist remembers him. He stands up and notices the uniform, commenting that Gang Yu got himself a new job. But the protagonist warns that he doesn't look so good and gives him the same choice, surrender or die. The cannibal smiles, saying he knew they'd meet again and remembers his old team. In a flashback, we see the villain tied to a pillar after being captured by the team. The scene shows Gang Yu's team in shock as they see a pot where he was cooking human remains. Disgusted, the protagonist stares at the villain who mockingly asks if it doesn't look delicious. In the flashback, the villain says the food is fresh and delicious with a psychopathic smile. Filled with rage, Gang Yu says he'll have to kill him right there without a second thought. But one of his teammates yells his name, stopping him from advancing on the villain. She was just standing there, watching Gang Yu almost lose control over the provocation. With a worried look, she says no, reminding him they couldn't kill anyone. The cannibal then taunts him, saying Gang Yu seemed pretty unhappy with the decision to just arrest him. Back in the present, the protagonist warns that if he doesn't answer, he'll die right now. The villain then asks with a smile if he knows why he kills people. But Gang Yu couldn't care less and attacks with full force, not wanting to hear a single word. The cannibal then explains that he did it all so people would remember him. With a maniacal look, he says he did everything so they would remember him forever. He explains that when he kills someone, he becomes the most memorable person in the victim's life. And by using his power, he can imprint his memory into the eyes of those he attacks. This traps the victims in hallucinations, reliving their encounter with him. That way, he's never forgotten. And as proof, he remembers everyone he's ever killed. Boasting, the villain says he can name his victims one by one, starting with a girl. But before he can finish, a hand of purple energy pierces through his body, taking him by surprise. Even wounded, the villain stumbles. And Gang Yu says it wasn't bad for an inmate from solitary. The protagonist then reveals he was actually aiming for the bastard's talkative mouth. He taunts him, saying his power wasn't fast enough to dodge the attack. On the verge of death, the villain asks if Gang Yu remembers who he killed to get there. But the protagonist replies that he doesn't because trash like them aren't worth remembering. Hearing this, the villain is shocked and decides to use his hallucination power. He then shows images of our Gang Yu's former teammates to mess with him. The projections of his friends call out his name, asking him to stop all of this. The cannibal then smiles and says, maybe Gang Yu will remember the next scene he's about to see. His teammate calls his name again, scared as she sees the attack coming her way. But the protagonist doesn't fall for the trick and dispels the entire illusion with a single blow. He then faces the villain and asks if those are all the tricks he has. The villain stands there sweating, unable to believe Gang Yu didn't fall for his trick. He says he doesn't understand how the protagonist could attack the illusions of his friends without hesitation. But Gang Yu gives a slight smirk and begins to explain that they are just hallucinations. And with a swift blow, he mercilessly cuts the cannibal in half. The psycho's body falls to the floor, and Gang Yu stands there victorious over him. With a cold look, he says he's no longer a hero, but a prison officer. But the villain, in his last breath, disagrees and says he's not a guard. He continues, saying that our protagonist is only one thing in the end, a monster, revealing what he truly thinks of Gang Yu. He then adds that deep down he's no different from Sungwon Hwang. The protagonist listens in silence, but doesn't let the villain's words affect him in the slightest. The scene shifts to the basement where Hwang looks up, seeming quite bored with everything. He complains to the fallen woman, saying she's boring for not even fighting back. But she just lies there quietly, staring at the villain with a very tired and sad expression. With a bored look on his face, Hwang wonders how long it will take Gang Yu to arrive. He then thinks that maybe it's better for him to go up himself instead of just waiting there. The scene changes to a location far from the prison where a mysterious group was observing everything from above. One of the men asks the leader when they should intervene, but she tells him he has already arrived. She stares at the tablet, mesmerized by the image of that man, Gang Yui, on the monitor. And with a very sinister smile, she says that man will be her husband one day. Canis asks, confused, if she's talking about her husband. Sinka excitedly replies that, yes, he will be her husband, confusing a subordinate. Canis then reminds her that she said she wanted Sungwon Hwang as her husband. Gato then confirms that's why they attacked the place to save Hwang. Canis insists that Gang Yu is a hero, but Sinka corrects him, saying he was. With an insane look, she yells that he doesn't look like a hero now, as Gang Yu listens in silence. Her men point out that polygamy is illegal, so she has to choose just one of them. Then, with an intense glint in her eyes, she begins to say that the survivor will be the man she chooses, pitting the two against each other in a fight to the death. With a wicked smile, she wonders which one of them will come out alive. The scene changes, and director Se Yoon-jo praises Officer Seo for his good work. She remarks that he wasted no time clearing the prison's ground floor. Se-yoon warns that the prisoners get stronger on the lower floors and suggests he take a rest, but Gang Yu refuses to stop and demands she open the door immediately. The director stares back at the officer and simply says she understands his decision. Before he goes down, the director tells him she has a favor to ask. She explains she's still receiving signals, specifically from the second basement floor. They are signals from officers who survived on the lower floors but are in trouble. She urgently asks him to help them get back to their families. Gang Yu then asks if she knows how many officers are alive on each floor. Se-yoon says no, as all communicators below the first basement level have been destroyed. But she reveals there is one exception, as the scene shows an officer on the ground. This exception, she explains, is on the fifth basement floor where a camera is still working. On the screen, a desperate officer screams for help, completely terrified by the situation. He begs for someone to help him as a bizarre creature approaches. Then Sungwon Hwang appears, choking a muscular prisoner with a smile on his face. With a swift and violent strike, he destroys the camera filming the action. Hwang smirks where the camera used to be, knowing someone wants them to see the chaos below. Back in the present, Gang Yu says he's on his way as the guards get ready. Over the radio, director Se-eun authorizes access, opening the way to the lower level. She warns him again to be careful as the prisoners below are much stronger than those on the ground floor, but the door is already opening. Suddenly, a giant prisoner attacks with a powerful punch, catching everyone by surprise. He mocks them, saying a surprise punch always wins and that they already knew he was coming. Upstairs, the director screams Gang Yu's name, but a voice reassures her. This voice warns that she shouldn't worry about him, but about her own problems. The red-haired prisoner appears out of nowhere behind her, leaving her completely stunned. With a swift move, he grabs her by the neck, saying he's finally caught the director. He tightens his grip on her neck, saying he always wanted to wipe that smug smile off her face. Then he yells to the others that he's got the director, and they can all take turns with her. But suddenly, the prisoner feels something strange and stops talking instantly. He looks back and sees the hallway filled with bodies, completely shocked by the scene. The prisoner is utterly confused, breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes what happened there. Just then, Gongyu emerges from the shadows and attacks the prisoner holding the hostage upstairs. In the blink of an eye, the enemy's body is completely shredded with no chance to defend himself. Gang Yu's attack continues, completely tearing the prisoner's body apart with his dark power. The director falls to the floor, terrified yet relieved to have been saved at the last second. With a dirty face, Gang Yu warns her not to be nearby when they open the next floor. Gang Yu glances at the bodies on the floor and says the place isn't safe for her. He repeats with a serious look, stressing that her presence here will only get in the way. Director Se-yoon looks embarrassed and replies that she understands. But as he turns to go down, she calls his name one last time. She warns him that the villain Tomoki, captured by him, is in solitary on the first basement floor. Gang Yu just stares down the path and replies coldly that he already knows. The scene then shifts to solitary confinement on the first basement floor where the ground is already cracked. Inside, the prisoners hear noises, and one of them thinks the others have managed to escape. But the villain, Tomoki, appears with a mocking smile, calling them all idiots. Sitting on a guard, she says that none of them would make that much noise. She explains that she told them to be quiet but they didn't listen, bragging about her strength. Tomoki then points to her own head, saying they're villains because they don't think. A giant prisoner gets angry and curses at her, not liking her mockery at all. He asks if she wants to die, but Tomoki just laughs and doubts he could kill her. Another villain points out they've only killed civilians and asks if she's ever killed someone with powers. She scoffs, saying if they had fought, they certainly wouldn't be locked up in here. Furious, the prisoner unleashes his aura and yells that he's going to kill a power user right now. He lunges forward to attack, but Tomoki transforms her arm and strikes him first. The brute is sliced in half by her demonic arm. With a blood-soaked hand, she asks who's killing whom now, "You arrogant bastard." She explains that she learned to fight like a hero and use that knowledge to kill other heroes. Then the ex-heroine makes an offer, calling for all the prisoners to join her. Licking the blood, she promises to teach them how to hunt and kill people with superpowers. Tomoki says she can teach them because she knows the hero's weaknesses very well. With an insane smile, she reveals she knows everything about Gang Yuzio's abilities. A prisoner asks in surprise if she really knows Gang Yuzio's abilities. He continues, wanting to know how the hell she'd get information like that while locked up in here. With a smile, she reminds them she had a long career as a hero. But one of the villains cuts her off, asking what difference that information makes now. He puts her down, saying Sayo was elite and she was just a third-rate hero. Hearing that, Tomoki just lets out a mocking laugh, amused by the taunt. She begins to explain that Ryausa, the leader, initiated a reform of industry. The first rule was to redefine what it meant to be a hero, forbidding them from killing villains. Then the second rule was to require all heroes to train together in teams. And finally, she completely abolished the level system that ranked heroes. She reveals the key point, saying the system was already gone before Gang Yu joined. Because of that, rumors started that he was the leader's lover or had powerful connections. One of the villains agrees, realizing that he's, in fact, never seen Seo fight. He's scared of Gang Yu's strength, but Tomoki calms him down, saying this place was full of weaklings. She says that even the two of them, who've killed thousands, could have beaten the first floor. Tomoki continues, citing other prisoners who also killed thousands of people on their own. With a smile, she asks if it isn't true, showing that they are stronger. She clarifies that she's not saying Gang Yuzio is weak and she's sure he's strong. But with a confident look, she reveals that she knows his weakness, and that's why they can beat him. One of the prisoners still doubts her, but she ignores him as if the question was foolish. She pressures the others, saying they don't really have much of a choice but to fight. And to make matters worse, she warns that Gang Yu is getting closer with every passing second. With no other option, one of the prisoners agrees to join her in the fight. Tomoki then faces their leader and directly asks what he's going to do. He stands up, agrees to fight alongside her, and immediately asks for the plan. The scene changes, explaining that powers emerged centuries ago and were divided into three types. The first type is physical, which modifies and strengthens the user's body. The second type is creation, which allows for the creation of materials from nothing. And finally, the special type, which is basically everything else that doesn't fit. Back in the prison, the villains are quiet, not understanding her explanation at all. Suddenly, one of the prisoners senses his presence and mourns that the target has arrived. With glowing eyes, The telepath confirms the target is in the area and ready to attack. Using his telepathy, he asks if the others can see him, receiving confirmation. Tomoki then reveals that Gangyu's power is the physical type, just like hers. It's explained that she thought she knew his weakness from watching him train in the past. In a flashback, a young Gangyu faces a training robot that initiates its combat protocol. The giant robot activates its combat mode, preparing to fight at full strength. Back in the present, Gangyu gives them a choice, telling them to put on the suppressors or die. One of the prisoners doesn't think twice and fires an energy beam right at him. The attack hits Gangyu head-on, who doesn't even move to dodge the blow. In the flashback, Tomoki realizes Gangyu's weakness is that he doesn't dodge attacks. In the present, another prisoner gets ready to strike, taking advantage of his supposed weakness. Tomoki's strategy is revealed, using prisoners with long-range attacks to defeat him. With that, a shower of attacks of all kinds is fired at the officer. The telepath confirms he's taking all the hits, and Tomoki already knew he would. But Tomoki already knew the reason why Gangyu didn't dodge the attacks. He simply didn't feel the need to dodge because the blows were too weak, and that's precisely why the villain had prepared a very unpleasant surprise for him. Tomoki had added something extra to that shower of long-range attacks. Suddenly, Gangyu's eyes widen as he feels something different in the air. Just then, several devices latch onto his body, completely immobilizing him. With that, Gangyu is covered in gadgets, limiting his movements. One of the villains announces that everything is ready, revealing them to be power suppressors. He explains that he took the devices from the guards' bodies just as she had asked, but the leader questions if that would even work on him, such a powerful elite hero. Tomoki reassures him, saying they have enough to seal his powers. She explains that Million will attach the suppressors while the others distract him. But with a wicked smile, she decides to play it safe just to guarantee victory. Then she reveals that 30 devices are more than enough for the job. The prisoners celebrate, yelling that he's done for, but something unexpected was about to happen. It turns out Tomoki's perfect plan actually had 3 major fatal flaws. The first flaw is revealed, showing that Gangyu wasn't the least bit defenseless. With a burst of power, he breaks free from the suppressors, surprising everyone. The prisoners stare in shock as Gangyu was much stronger than they had imagined. He was more powerful than any other top-tier hero that had ever existed. The telepath feels the return of his strength and starts to bleed, sensing his power. In shock, he warns everyone that Gang has crushed all the suppression devices. Tomoki can't believe it as her plan depended entirely on those suppressors. Cries of despair begin to echo through the prison floor as the plan fails. One of the prisoners screams in hatred, watching Gangyu walk slowly toward them. Desperate, Tomoki tells the telepath to tell everyone to start the second phase of the plan, but Gangyu simply orders in a firm voice for everyone to stand still right now. One of the villains ignores the order, preparing his hand to attack a helpless hostage. He yells that he'll kill the guard if Gangyu moves, using the hostage as leverage. The scene shows that the villains had taken several guards to try to stop his advance. Not caring about the hostages, Gangyu unleashes his dark power all at once. With that, the second flaw of the plan is revealed, killing the villains in an instant. A prisoner realizes she didn't tell them his power wasn't just the physical type. It's then explained that Gangyu also has special type powers, which are much more versatile. The third flaw emerges, and the villains consider putting the devices back on to save themselves. One of them tries to get Gangyu's attention, looking for a chance to surrender. In a panic, he yells that he'll put the suppressor back on, begging for his life. He pleads not to die, but it was too late, and Gangyu's power destroys him. Tomoki's fatal mistake was creating a strategy to fight someone she simply had no chance of beating, underestimating Gangyu. His dark power flies past the remaining prisoners who are paralyzed with fear. The prisoner leader despairs and curses, realizing his end has come. He screams in desperation, asking if she doesn't have a plan B for this situation. He regrets trusting her and doesn't understand how the suppressors failed. He says he's going to surrender to live, but Tomoki tells him to shut up immediately. With a furious scream, she attacks him from behind with her transformed arm. She curses him, asking if he thinks he's better than her as she attacks him relentlessly. Standing over his body, she says they used enough devices for an elite hero. She doesn't understand how he broke them all and wonders why he never fought before. Tomoki completely loses it, screaming that none of this makes any sense to her. But suddenly, the villain hears a noise and whips around startled. She sees an officer crawling on the floor trying to sneak away from the scene. The guard panics and starts screaming for help, begging for his life. As she moves to attack the guard with her transformed arm, Gangyu cuts it off. She looks at her arm on the floor, then glares at Gangyu as he slowly approaches. Gangyu addresses the guard, mockingly calling the villain hero Tomoki. He corrects himself, calling her a prisoner and asking if she has any last words. With nothing left to do, she lets out a laugh and admits she's completely screwed. Gangyu asks if those are her last words, staring coldly at the villain. But Tomoki ignores him, asking if it's true that all the heroes from Equality are dead. He confirms it and she starts to laugh, saying she finally understands the situation. Tomoki then deduces that her sister, Tomai, must also be dead since she was a hero. Hearing that, Gangyu just stays silent, his face expressionless. She lets out a laugh of relief and comments that her sister is finally gone. With a smile, she says she warned her sister not to be a hero, but the fool didn't listen. She accuses him, saying the other heroes don't know he used to kill people in Equality. Then she taunts him, saying Rausa must be turning in her grave right now. Gangyu loses his patience and harshly asks if she's done. The scene changes, explaining that Tomoki felt something was wrong with the industry. That was the first feeling she had as soon as she became a real hero. The idea that heroes simply hunted villains started to bother her over time. In a flashback, Gangyu faces a villain holding a hostage and tells him to stand still. The thug yells at the hero, threatening the hostage if he tries anything. Ignoring the hostage, the hero cuts the villain in half right in front of her. With a satisfied smile, he simply announces that the mission was a success. The scene returns to Tomoki, and it's explained that she became a hero for a simple reason. A flashback shows her holding hands with her younger sister, Tomai. Her sister says she's an amazing hero, greatly admiring her work. Unlike Tomoki, her sister had no powers and always needed help with everything. But there was something strange about their relationship which made Tomai thoughtful. Tomoki would show off for her sister, revealing she also had a very dark side. It's explained that, as a hero, she had one main job every day. Her duty was to save people, like the woman who thanks her for being rescued. But she didn't do it to serve the greater good, but for another reason. She saved others only to feel superior and more powerful than normal people. Until one day on a mission, she killed a villain, and that changed her forever. This death made her feel a superiority she had never experienced before. With an insane smile, she realizes that killing someone felt very good. It's explained that after the first kill, Tomoki simply couldn't stop. With a dark smile, she discovered she enjoyed killing, especially her fellow heroes. She hunted the weaker ones just for the pleasure of feeling superior because she loved seeing the look of surprise and betrayal on their faces right at the moment of death. They all begged for their lives and made the same expression of pure despair in the end, and Tomoki simply loved that feeling, but no crime goes unpunished forever. Her sister, Tomei, found it strange that she came home late smelling of blood and decided to follow her. That's when she saw her sister in the middle of a massacre committing several murders. In shock, the young girl calls out Tomoki's name, unable to believe what was happening. Tomoki turns around, surprised, and complains that she told her not to leave the house late. But with a body lying beside her, she says it's too late to worry. With a sick smile, she invites her sister to join her in the slaughter, and adds that if she doesn't want to, she can do the job herself. Her sister screams no, terrified by the proposal and Tomoki's insane state. And that was the final memory, the reason she was captured and imprisoned by Gangyu. It's explained that this is how Tomai awakened her superpower in a moment of despair. And with a broken heart, her first mission as a hero was to stop her own sister. After that, she officially registered and started hunting Tomoki, who had become a villain. Until one day, the villain Tomoki was finally cornered by her younger sister. Using her chains, Tomai restrains her sister and places her under arrest for her crimes. But Tomoki scoffs, saying she didn't have to call her a villain, which is really annoying. She notes her sister's power, but says it's a shame it's not a physical one. Tomoki then says she feels sorry for those who don't have physical type powers like her. Laughing, she says they'll never feel the pleasure of crushing someone with their own hands. Filled with hatred, Tomai replies that her sister will never understand and that she is no longer her family. Back in the present, the villain asked Gangyu how her sister Tomei died. She wants to know if her sister died peacefully, making Gangyu thoughtful for a moment. It's revealed that Tomei died during the great battle against the villain Sung Won Huang. In her last words, the fallen hero can only say that it all hurts so much. And before she died, she begged to be saved and called out Tomoki's name, her sister. Gangyu finishes the story, revealing that her sister called her name as she died. Tomoki regrets asking, falling silent and visibly shaken by the news. But her arm regenerates, and she says that whole story left a bitter taste. She transforms, saying it all left a really bad taste in her mouth. With a cry of rage, she lunges at him with everything she has ready for the final attack. But he dodges her blade, and she's surprised by his defense. He grabs her arm tightly and she screams in pain, unable to break free. Then Gangyu lands a swift kick on her. He throws her against the wall with a violent impact. Tomoki gets up from the rubble and charges at him again, filled with hatred. But Gangyu stops her with a powerful punch to the stomach, ending the fight. The blow makes her spit blood, and her transformation slowly fades as she falls to the ground. The villain returns to normal, falling to her knees, completely defeated before him. He says she's on death row, but that it's sad to kill a colleague's family member. Gangyu stares at the villain with a serious expression, thinking about what to do with her. With a smile, she tries her luck and asks him to spare her life. She reminds him of his promise not to kill, but he warns her he's no longer a hero. Even so, the villain keeps begging for her life, going into a total panic. She screams desperately that she doesn't want to die, but he tells her to listen to herself. He reminds her that this is the same plea all of her victims made to her. With a cold gaze, the officer asks what answer she gave them. With no way out, Tomoki just lets out a nervous laugh and curses, knowing it's over. Then, Gangyu concentrates his dark power in his hand, preparing the final blow to finish her. His fight with the prisoners makes the entire prison shake with the force of their blows. The sounds of battle could make a person fall in love, leaving Sinka thrilled with the fight. But for others, like a hidden officer, all the noise only brought more fear. The vibrations from the fight travel through every floor of the prison, drawing more attention. And all that sound, which caused different reactions in everyone, reached a certain someone. The sound of the fight gave Sung Wan Huang something to look forward to, eager for the big meeting. Huang announces he can't wait any longer, impatient with the delay. With an insane smile, Shang Wan announces he's already on his way up to meet Gangyu. Then he takes a powerful punch, slamming into the wall. Huang is surprised by the power, saying that was a very unpleasant shock. Suddenly, a giant man appears, asking if the boy is bored down there. With a gentle smile, the prisoner Kingston offers to play with him for a bit. Sung Hwan mocks the old man, and with a smile, says he looks pretty scary. But Kingston laughs, saying he's just an old man who likes to play with kids. In the control room, the guards desperately shout for Director Son Jo. She asks what the problem is, and they tell her to look at what's happening on the 5th sublevel. A guard reports that Kingston and Sung Hwan Huang have just met, which she considers good news. Se-eun says this means one of them will definitely die, and she hopes Kingston wins. She explains that he isn't as great a threat as Huang, so she'd rather he survive. But suddenly, her expression changes as she notices something strange in the scene she's watching. The director wonders why the prisoner is keeping that woman floating in the air. Down below, Sung asks if the old man is going to play with him, and Kingston says yes. But he says he doesn't want to play with the others, making his true target clear. Kingston then turns to Sung Won, saying his game is only with the boy. We're told that Kingston was the first criminal imprisoned in Ruculus and the oldest one there. But unlike the other inmates who killed millions, his story was quite different. The reason for his imprisonment was that he had murdered only 3 people in his entire life. His first victim was none other than Caracas, the most powerful and cruel villain of his time. The other 2 victims were Clark and Hilo, the strongest hero duo of that era. It's said that Kingston appeared out of nowhere and killed the 3 most powerful people in the world. After that, he faces the soldiers and asks if that makes him the strongest of all. But then, he shows a disappointed expression, finding it all very dull. The narrator explains that even though he was a threat, he only killed 3 people and surrendered voluntarily. These factors delayed his execution for 30 years, and now he proposes a game to Shangwan. The boy doesn't seem to like the idea, but he accepts the old man's challenge anyway. At that, he uses his power to make all the surrounding guards and prisoners float in the air. A strong bluish aura takes over everything, trapping everyone in his telekinetic power. Without a second thought, he simply blows everyone up, splattering blood everywhere. He then faces Kingston and says that maybe he can play a little with a sadistic look in his eyes. Seeing this, Seung-won launches a powerful attack, sending waves of red energy toward him. The old man moves with incredible speed, dodging the attacks and preparing to counter. His fist clenches tightly, showing that age hasn't diminished his raw strength at all. With his palm open, he begins to manipulate the surrounding energy, crushing the bodies into spheres. With a deafening roar, the attack explodes, revealing the full extent of Kingston's power. The dust settles, and the two face each other, the air thick with blood and tension. Kingston comments that he thought the boy used telekinesis, but his fighting style proves otherwise. He then asks if Seung-hwan has any other attacks, but the boy says he's changed his mind. Seung-hwan says that playing with him doesn't seem fun, as he sees no thrill in killing an old man. Seeing his arrogance, Kingston gets serious and calls the boy a cocky brat. He continues, saying he's seen many who think they're big shots in their own little worlds. With that, he stomps his foot hard on the ground, shattering everything around him with a shockwave. Kingston finishes by saying that these people always let their own egos take over. Back in the control room, a guard screams in fear as the entire building trembles violently. He yells that the structure is collapsing, but Director Si-eun tells him to stop exaggerating. She assures him that the prison's 20 layers of special walls can easily handle the impact. Back in the fight, Kingston stares at the boy and says it's time for a new plan. He lunges forward, warning that he's going to teach his arrogant opponent some manners. His advance is so fast that Seung-hwan can barely react, shocked by his speed. In an instant, Kingston is right in front of him, preparing a full-force kick. The blow lands squarely with an impact so powerful, it echoes throughout the entire sublevel. In the control room, the tremor makes everything shake, and Inspector Gang Ho-seo arrives amidst the chaos. He asks if everyone is okay, but another guard desperately wants to know who won the fight. But Director Se-eun warns that the outcome of the fight is no longer the real problem. Down below, Seung-hwan stares at the trail of destruction, seeing the immense hole in the prison walls. One of the guards reports, shocked, that the last attack simply destroyed all the containment walls. The director finally grasps the gravity of the situation, realizing that now they're screwed. Seung-won is impressed by the old man's strength and thinks the situation might get interesting. Seeing the escape route, he considers following Kingston outside to get out of this place. But suddenly, a man appears, saying it's not worth following that old man out. He introduces himself and his group, and the leader, Sinka, says it'll be more fun to stay and talk to her. In the command room, the guards are confused, not understanding who the new intruders are. Seung-hwan faces the mysterious group and asks who they are, completely surprised by their appearance. With a smile, Sinka replies that he'll learn more about her if they talk. The director panics and shouts, wondering how that girl got to the 5th sublevel. But Sinka and her group take their positions, and she says that, first of all, they have something to do. Sinka appears on the monitor and announces that the spectators of this fight are no longer welcome. With an intense flash of light, she says they can go, and the screens in the control room go dark. Director Se-eun recovers from the glare and screams in anger at having lost sight of the fight. The scene changes to show Gang Yu-seo standing in front of a giant gate, awaiting orders. He uses his communicator and reports that he's cleared the 1st sublevel, asking them to open the gate. The director tries to respond, but the signal starts to fail, and the communication is cut off completely. Gang Yu finds the silence strange and calls for her again, but the device only emits a failure beep. He stands there alone in the middle of the empty hallway, not understanding what's going on up on the surface. The officer concludes that the signal must be bad down here and decides to move forward on his own. Using all his strength, he begins to pry open the heavy metal gate with his bare hands. We're told that Gang Yu went down the stairs heading toward the prison's 2nd sublevel. But unlike the upper floors that reeked of blood, this corridor was very different. There was no strange smell in the air, which puts the officer even more on alert. The place was completely empty with no prisoners and not even a single body on the floor. Everything was almost too clean until he hears a scream and becomes wary of danger. A female guard runs desperately, yelling at some strange creatures to stay away from her. The fire monsters are about to catch her, and she screams for them to get away at once. She runs toward Gang Yu, who stands there, not understanding any of the chaos. The woman recognizes him instantly and shouts the name Gang Ho, surprising the officer. But one of the creatures takes advantage of the distraction and lunges to attack the guard from behind. Without hesitation, Gang Yu uses a dark power and destroys the monster before it can reach her. The creature vanishes into thin air, and the guard now on the floor looks up at him, not understanding what just happened. He then turns to her and asks if she's okay with a very serious look. Relieved, the woman jumps into his arms and hugs him tightly, shouting his name again. She says she thought he was on the 5th floor and compliments the incredible power he used. But he gently pushes her away, preparing to explain the mix-up. With red eyes, he reveals that he's not Gang Ho, but his brother. The guard is in shock and asks if he's the famous hero Gang Yu Seo, the brother she's heard about. She finds it strange that he's in an officer's uniform, and he quickly realizes she's Gang Ho's colleague. Gang Yu then warns her, saying this place isn't safe for them to keep talking. He remains serious, but now she calls him her brother-in-law, making things even weirder. The guard laughs and says they haven't been properly introduced, preparing to present herself. With a smile, she extends her hand and announces that she will be his future sister-in-law, Gang Ho's fiancée. Gang Yu is completely stunned, frozen by the news and unsure of what to say to her. The scene shifts to a cell on the 2nd sublevel where a mysterious voice calls for Mile. A boy named Meal comments with a smile that it seems there's an intruder among them. Meal confirms it, and it appears the two are already aware of our hero's presence. Meal then wonders how many sins the invader has committed, looking at tortured prisoners. Miel reports that the outsider killed her dog, referring to the creature from before. With a cold gaze, Miel says, if that's the case, then it's simple. The intruder is going to hell. Back in the hallway, Jia Hong says she had only seen Gang Yu in photos and videos before. With a smile, she introduces herself as Jia Hong and compliments him, saying he's much more handsome in person. He replies that his brother mentioned a girlfriend, but not marriage, and she gets ready to tell him. Then she points to her own belly with an excited look on her face, ready to share the news. She then reveals that his nephew or niece is already growing right inside. Shocked, Gang Yu can barely react, and she explains they only found out a few days ago. Jia Hong says Gang Ho's plan was to tell him everything after Huang's execution. He asks if it's really true, and she confirms, wanting to know if there's a problem. With a serious look, he simply replies that no, it wouldn't be a problem at all. She then changes the subject and asks what he's doing there and why he's in uniform. The guard is shocked when he explains he came as a special officer to execute everyone. Confused, she asks why he would carry out the executions himself, finding it strange. Seeing her confusion, he says he'll quickly explain what happened at the prison. He starts by explaining that the prison was hit by an EMP attack and she doesn't understand the acronym. She asks who would do such a thing, but he tells her they're still investigating the case. Worried, Jia Hong asks about Gang Ho since he was supposed to be on the 5th sublevel. With a serious gaze, Gang Yu prepares to break the news about what happened to his brother. She stands there anxious for the answer, and he pauses before continuing. He then reveals that Gang Ho is sending out rescue signals directly from the 5th sublevel. Hearing the news, she is greatly relieved, happy to know her fiancé is alive. He says the place isn't safe, but she refuses to leave, insisting she will stay. Jia Hong claims she can make his path easier and that he's going to need help. Then she reveals her power of psychometry, the ability to read people's memories. She quickly rushes to explain that she only uses her power when she has a good reason. The guard says she uses her ability to help inmates and find out if they're guilty. He asks how that can help him, and she starts to explain the situation on the floor. She explains that the floor is under the control of the siblings, Meal and Meal, from solitary confinement. They summon a creature that stabs the victims' hearts, turning them into puppets. As a result, all the prisoners on the 2nd sublevel are now puppets controlled by them. She finishes by saying that because she knows their power, she knows exactly how she can help him. Jia Hong reveals they are disciples of the mage, a powerful villain Gang Yu already knows. But he says he doesn't need help and asks her to get out of there and stay safe. Then she alerts him, warning that some of the controlled puppets are prison officers. The guard explains that he won't be able to tell the guards apart, but she can read their memories. He then questions the logic since if they became puppets, he assumes they're already dead. But she assures him they're not, saying they are all still alive and can be saved. With great determination, Jia Hong claims she can persuade the siblings to stop this. Gang Yu tries to argue, asking her to think about the baby because the place isn't safe. His gaze shows the concern he feels for the safety of his new family, but she insists she's an officer and that she has to do her duty no matter what. Seeing her stubbornness, he extends his hand and finally agrees to the plan, accepting her help. He gives a gentle smile that reminds her of Gang Ho, but something strange is about to happen. Suddenly, his dark power manifests, trapping the guard in claws of red energy. With a gesture, he lifts her into the air, completely immobilizing her against her will. She is trapped in a sphere of power, not understanding why he attacked her like that. Gang Yu explains that the energy is his power, and that it will keep her safe from any danger. She asks if it will affect her body as the floating sensation is very strange. He just watches her for a moment before turning his attention to what's coming ahead. Then, an army of statues with golden halos appears, completely blocking their path. Trapped in the sphere, Jiahong warns that this is the power of Meal, the older of the two siblings. She says more officers have been captured, and he asks which of them are the real guards. The young woman then concentrates and closes her eyes, preparing to use her special ability. With her eyes glowing purple, she activates her psychometry to read the statue's memories. Her focused gaze scans the entire army, searching for the minds of her former colleagues. After a moment, she finally finds them and reports that the officers are the two in the very back. But just as she was about to give the strategy, the energy claws begin to close in front of her. The red sphere closes completely, and she screams, not understanding what's happening. Desperate, she shouts that she can't see anything anymore and asks what he's doing. He just stares at the sphere and says calmly that there's a much easier way to handle this. With that, his power surges forward and destroys them all, ensuring the officers won't be harmed. One of the controlled monsters lunges at Gang Yu, trying to hit him with its sharp claws, but he doesn't even flinch, stopping the attack with a single punch, showing he's not messing around. With a cold look, he explains that the inmates will be killed as it's the easiest way to separate the two groups. Then he starts to fight seriously, destroying the puppets with a series of brutal blows. The carnage unfolds while Jiahong watches everything from inside her protective sphere. The scene focuses on the sphere, which now protects the two officers who were spared from the massacre. On the other side of the hall, the siblings Meal and Mael watch the fight, surprised by his power. Meal then asks her older brother what he thinks of the mysterious intruder. Meal wonders if he might be even stronger than their master, the powerful mage. The younger girl asks if he might also be stronger than a certain mysterious woman. Seeing the hero's power, Mael gets scared and calls out to her brother, her voice trembling. She gets closer and admits she's afraid of the strength the enemy is showing them. Mael tries to calm his sister, telling her not to worry as they have a plan. He turns to his army of puppets and warns that it won't be easy for him to kill them. Inside the sphere, Jiahong screams in fright as the energy closes in around her. She asks why he trapped her, and Gang Yu apologizes, saying he should have warned her. Confused, she demands to know what happened, and he explains that he isolated the officers. With a cold gaze, he finishes his sentence, revealing that he executed all the other prisoners. The guard is shocked and yells that the execution devices are on the 5th sublevel, but he reveals he didn't use anything, having done all the dirty work with his own hands. She then asks whose crazy idea this was, unable to believe what she just heard. Without hesitation, Gang Yu takes responsibility, stating the decision was entirely his. Jiahong questions if the director agreed to the plan, and he confirms that she did. The hero sighs, seeming tired of having to explain himself to her. Outraged, she curses the director, wondering what that woman was thinking to allow this. She then faces him and asks if he's okay with this, and he says he just did his duty. He goes on to say that a corrections officer's job isn't what she thinks, but she yells that their duty is to rehabilitate the inmates, not just kill everyone. Losing patience, he cuts her off, warning that he doesn't need a lecture on ideals. He remembers them saying that heroes save people and only the law can judge the guilty. But with a furious look, he says he knows exactly what happens when you just follow ideals. Then an image shows them being massacred by uncontrollable beasts. The hero then says he no longer cares if he's an officer or a real hero. With hatred in his eyes, he says someone had to put an end to those inhuman beasts. Trapped in the sphere, Jiahong is frightened by his coldness and calls out his name. She still tries to argue that they are human, but he asks if she's serious. The guard is left speechless, feeling the weight of his question. Then he loses his patience and yells, questioning what makes her think they're human. Gang Yu explains that everyone there has killed thousands of people, and they all deserve to die. We're told that in the past there was a debate about ending the death penalty due to mistakes. But he reminds her that ever since psychics appeared, no one has been wrongfully convicted. She still insists they have a story, but he sighs, tired of the conversation. As she was about to mention the sisters, He interrupts her, saying her name sternly. He then stares at her and asks about the victims, questioning if they didn't have a story too. Trapped in the sphere, Jia Hong starts to question what he's doing, terrified by the situation. He then says it makes no difference as they were going to die one way or another, but she yells that one individual shouldn't have the right to execute anyone on their own. With a slight smirk, he shows he's not in the mood to argue. Tired of the talk, he raises a hand and tells her to stop with the nonsense. Gang Yu warns that's enough, and if she continues, he'll handle things his way. The threat terrifies her as she realizes he really wasn't kidding. He then falls silent, hoping she'll understand the discussion is over. Just then, a new group of shadow puppets appears, looking much stronger than the others. The hero asks who the officers are, and she replies they're the three in the back. He gets the message and moves forward, preparing for another round of executions. From inside the sphere, the guard just watches everything with a look of pure concern. She then taunts him, saying that Gang Ho will be very sad when he finds out. The comment hits home, and his eye twitches with rage upon hearing his brother's name. Ignoring her words, he turns to the new puppets, ready to wipe them out. With a red energy weapon, Gang Yu charges forward and cuts down the enemy with a swift strike. His face contorts in anger as Jia Hong's taunt echoes in his mind. The memory of her words enrages him, causing him to lose control. Just then, the dark power begins to consume him, showing how shaken he is inside. He remembers that whole idealistic conversation, which only served to frustrate him even more. With a powerful blow, he unleashes his anger on the puppet, showing he's done talking. He recalls a woman who only talked but never actually acted when it mattered. Tired of all the talk, he blows up the puppet with his bare hands without mercy. Gang Yu remembers she would talk and talk, but when it was time for action, she did nothing useful. And the more he remembered the empty words, the more ferociously he attacked, terrifying Jia Hong. He then realizes that talking is always much easier than actually doing something. In any case, the narrator tells us that he managed to activate his mode number 5. With this new power, several spheres of dark energy appear all around his body. Without wasting time, he launches a devastating attack, showing the extent of his strength. And with that, he finally manages to vent some of his accumulated frustration. With a final explosion, the floor is covered in bloodstains, marking the end of the battle. And so, he unleashes all his frustration, killing the prisoners without any mercy. Sinka watches him from a distance, saying he gets more incredible every time she sees him. Meanwhile, Gang Yu and Jia Hong are alone in the hallway, surrounded by a deathly silence. The sphere opens slightly and he grabs a radio from one of the rescued officers. He then undoes the protection and the woman, a bit dizzy, says she can see again. She then points and says that the 3 guards up ahead are the real officers. He thanks her for her help and turns, excusing himself to solve the rest of the problem. Suddenly, his eye glows as he senses a powerful presence approaching them. Just then, a giant golem with a golden halo and another of thorns appears before them. The creature welcomes the outsider, and the 2 sisters appear right behind it. Mila remarks that he finally came to find her with a very challenging look in her eyes. Gang Yu faces the girl and says this saved him some trouble and that it's a pleasure to meet her. The giant golem takes its position as Gang Yu faces the sisters with Jia Hong still trapped. He then calls Meal and Meal by name with a serious defiant look. Meal asks Officer Hong why she didn't join them since she would have gone to heaven. But Gang Yu ignores the chatter and orders the 2 to release everyone they're controlling. He then promises that if they obey, he'll give them a quick death. With a mocking smile, Mila asks if there's an option where he doesn't kill them. Gang Yu explains that the prisoners on the ground floor and the first sublevel had a chance to surrender. But he warns that everyone there has killed thousands, so death is their only option. Mila then changes the subject, saying she heard he used to work with their master. Mila also mentions the woman who captured them, showing she knows about his complicated past. Meal finishes by saying he's very different from his former colleagues. Annoyed, Meal shouts that he's definitely going to hell, but he tells her to shut up. He just replies, let's see who gets there first, as he prepares for the fight. Scared, Meal proposes a deal, saying she'll release everyone if he lets them go. But with a furious glare, he instantly rejects the offer, refusing any kind of deal. From inside the sphere, Jia Hong yells at the sisters, begging them not to make things worse. Mila then turns to her, ordering the officer to put her power suppressors back on. Mila says they've done nothing to deserve death and asks if the guard knows that. Scared, Jahong explains that's exactly why she needs to refuse their offer. Seeing the scene, Gangyu warns her that she won't be able to convince the two criminals of anything. He glares at them with hatred and says that words are wasted on beasts like them. Jahong gets worried about his attitude and calls his name very apprehensively, but he creates an energy weapon and says that even beasts can understand pain. Mila tries again, saying that if he listens to their story, he'll want to negotiate a deal. But he denies the request instantly, and Jahong screams his name, desperate at the scene. She still tries to insist, saying they can talk and find a peaceful way out of this. Losing patience, he turns to her and pleads for her to just be quiet. Mil calls him an outsider, and just then, his power lunges toward them. The energy traps them in midair and begins to squeeze hard without any mercy. He remembers that a villain once told him a very dark secret about people. This guy taught him the right way to torture others in full detail. With a serious look, he says he never thought this knowledge would be useful one day. Mil screams that he is the very beast he talks about and that talking is impossible. The younger sister, Mil, despairs and says no. He's not a beast. With hatred in her eyes, she corrects her and calls him a monster, which makes him very angry. At that, he begins to burn them slowly, showing that the has just begun. 2 more prisoners are captured, complaining about how having special powers sucks. Gangyu doesn't waste time and blows them up in mid-air, giving them no chance to defend themselves. As blood rains down, he wonders why these disgusting bastards keep insisting. He doesn't understand why they all keep calling him a monster, which pisses him off. One of the creatures stares at him, not understanding how he can be so cruel. Gangyu then walks among the bodies, stepping over the destruction he himself created. He finds the whole situation very disturbing and is unsettled by the carnage. The scene cuts to Male crying while holding a red energy sphere. Male asks if her sister needs help, but Male screams that she doesn't, sounding desperate. The older one tells her to focus on breaking the wall while she defends against the attacks. With a magic circle, Male says she'll try to use her power to resolve the situation. She focuses her energy on the sphere, preparing to try and delay the enemy's advance. Suddenly, a giant magic seal appears on the floor, and Gangyu notices the trap. From the portal, a bunch of bizarre demonic creatures start to emerge surrounding the hero. He faces the creatures and wonders if they used summoning powers this time. Since they're not human, he realizes he can kill them all and charges at them. Gangyu begins the massacre, jumping and slashing the monsters with his dark powers. With his red energy, he slices through the demons, creating a trail of pure destruction. Not even the bizarre smile of one of the creatures can stop his relentless attack. He continues to carve a path through the horde, giving none of them a chance to fight back. Mil watches everything in terror, unable to do anything to stop the carnage. She asks how long it will take, and Mil yells that she needs 10 more minutes. Hearing this, Mil bites her finger and says she just needs to do one little thing first. With her own blood, Mil activates the sphere and yells for her sister to buy her more time. She then throws the orb to the ground with all her might, seemingly using some kind of sacrifice. At that, an explosion blinds everything with a deafening noise in the hallway. When the smoke clears, the sisters appear coughing, not understanding what just happened. But suddenly, Gangyu appears right in front of them, taking the two by surprise. They stare at him in shock, and he explains that he's thought a bit about the whole situation. Gangyu says he realized the rest of the monsters will stop as soon as he captures them. So he concludes there's no point in fighting all of them since they are the only targets. Gangyu gives them one last chance and tells them to release everyone, promising a quick death in return. Gangyu Seo uses his energy threads, pinning the girl to the ground with a cold stare. The two girls then look up, noticing the barrier has too many layers to break through. He then approaches and orders them to release the creatures trapped there. With his eyes glowing red, he demands they undo the power immediately. One of them panics and screams, reaching out her hands as if begging for help. The camera pulls back, revealing the 3 of them are surrounded by enormous magic circles. Suddenly, Gangyu looks up, sensing an overwhelming presence manifest at the scene. From the ground, 4 gigantic angelic entities begin to emerge, looking down at them. The first introduces itself as Michael with golden eyes and a serene appearance. Right after, Gabriel and Raphael appear, both with imposing armor and wings. And finally, Uriel emerges, the most intimidating of all, his face shrouded in shadows. But in a shocking turn, the angels are trapped by the threads, and Gang Yu falls to the ground, defeated. The girls watch the scene in fear as the power begins to unravel. One of them screams in rage and tries to use her magic to attack whoever did this, but the spell goes wrong, and one of Gang Yu's companions is hit head-on. Held back by the guards, the girl screams desperately, telling everyone to stay away from her. She then threatens to kill all the officers if they don't let them leave, but a voice corrects her, saying it's actually if she doesn't let the officers go. She's left completely speechless, stammering, unable to understand what's happening. The camera turns to show her sister, Meal, tied up and suspended in the air by red threads. At this, Gang Yu steps forward and warns that if she doesn't obey, her sister will suffer a horrible death. The threads tighten, and Mila screams in pain as her sister calls out her name. The girl also feels the pain and breaks into a cold sweat, screaming that it hurts so much. Gang Yu just watches coldly, and with a smirk, he says that's fine by him. Defeated, she kneels and agrees to release the angels and retract her powers. But she asks to speak with Officer Jia Hong, only for Gang Yu to demand she release them first. He stares at the girl with his red eyes, warning her that he won't stop the torch. She screams again, and he finishes the sentence, saying he'll only stop when she frees them. The two sisters then join hands, and a golden energy envelopes them. Suddenly, the prisoners reappear behind the guards, leaving everyone confused by the situation. Gang Yu turns around, shocked to see that several prisoners have just appeared behind the guards. The inmates themselves are confused, wondering what the hell they're doing there. Suddenly, one of them is brutally sliced apart by emerging red energy threads. The two sisters scream in despair, covered in blood as they witness the horrific scene. In seconds, the ground was covered with bodies, leaving the officers paralyzed with fear. A guard recognizes him as the hero Gang Yu, but he just orders all the officers to move up. The man obeys instantly, and Gang Yu glares at the two sisters with a serious, dark expression. One of them calls him on their deal, saying she's already freed the angels and now it's his turn. He stares at the girl with his red eyes and says, "That's fine. He'll let them talk." They grow apprehensive at his response as he pauses before continuing. Gang Yu then says they'll go somewhere else, facing the pile of bodies on the ground. He lowers his head and says this isn't a pretty sight for a pregnant woman to see. At that very moment, Officer Jia starts screaming in pain as if she's being attacked. He explains that it's all over as he sees a vision of her trapped in a sphere of energy. Someone asks about the sisters, and Gang reveals they're right there inside the officer. He explains that they wanted to talk with the officer before being executed. Someone suggests using suppression devices, but Gang Yu tells them not to repeat themselves. With a furious look, he says everyone there has killed thousands and that he'll end this himself. Officer Hong is completely shocked, breaking into a cold sweat over his brutal decision. The sisters then ask her if they really think they deserve to die. One of them insists they did nothing to deserve the death penalty and begs her to say something. Gang Yu then allows her to speak, but warns her to be quick with her answer. The officer tries to explain, saying that what Meal did was a terrible thing, but she freezes mid-sentence, her eyes wide, unable to finish what she was going to say. The sisters hug each other crying, while the officer remains silent, visibly shaken. It's explained that, in the end, she couldn't say a single thing to them. Gang then asks if she has nothing to say, pressing the officer for an answer. The sisters wait expectantly, hoping the officer will finally say something in their favor. But he just says that he kept his promise, and the red sphere approaches them. With a cold gaze, Gang Yu announces that now, the two of them will finally be executed. One of the sisters cries desperately, begging them not to kill her because she doesn't want to die. Her sister hugs her in a panic, screaming her name while pleading for help. But Gang Yu doesn't listen and prepares a final attack with his red energy threads. With a single strike, he causes a gigantic explosion, destroying everything around them. When the dust settles, he finds himself surrounded by green smoke, completely confused. It's revealed that a giant man named Mago has trapped them all in an energy sphere. The entity introduces himself as the Mage of Equality, observing everything with a serene gaze. The sisters are surprised and call him Master, recognizing the imposing figure before them. Gang Yu is confused by the situation, wondering who the hell this Mago guy is. The mage then sighs, and the scene shows him wondering what's happening there. Gang Yu is intrigued by the situation, wondering what the hell that power was. He considers it might be the twins' ability, perhaps some kind of illusion to protect themselves. But he quickly dismisses the idea since criminals of their level wouldn't have such a strong defense. With that, he's absolutely certain it was the mage himself who used the ability. He's confused, trying to understand why the mage would use magic to defend the girls. He then decides thinking is useless and prepares his power to attack with everything he's got. The sisters hug each other desperately, seeing the attack is aimed at them. Then, the threads of red energy surge forward and crash against the barrier with full force. The shield shatters into 1,000 pieces, revealing Gang Yu's determined gaze. But the mage is unfazed and summons dozens of other magic circles around him. Gang Yu becomes furious and curses at the old man, asking what the hell he had done. The mage watches him with a confused look, not understanding the reason for so much hatred. Without hesitation, Gang Yu charges forward again, breaking another barrier with a punch. It's explained that he destroyed several of the mage's barriers, proving his absurd power. Even so, he felt a strange discomfort seeing the sisters hugging on the ground. It was a bad feeling he couldn't ignore, making him tense. The scene then shifts to a flashback showing a group of heroes in a field of flowers. There, the mage was taking care of some children, while the other heroes watched from a distance. One of his friends laughs and asks if the old-timer ever gets tired of playing with the kids. Another guy teases Tome about marriage, but she replies that she never said she would marry him. Then, a blonde woman accuses him of being unfaithful, but he immediately denies it, saying he never cheated. A voice then shouts to get everyone's attention and stop the silly argument. The mage and the children look up, inviting those who were there to come down and play along. While everyone was having fun, Gang Yu was sitting alone, away under a tree. The camera focuses on his face in the past, and someone calls out to him trying to interact. The mage approaches and asks if he doesn't like children, but Gang Yu says that's not it. He explains he just doesn't know how to interact, and the mage suggests acting like his parents did. But Gang Yu reveals that his parents died and that he only ever had his older brother in his life. The mage is completely embarrassed by the revelation, making a face of utter shock. The mage apologizes awkwardly, trying to fix the blunder he just made. He then calls Gang Yu's name, who remains serious and doesn't understand the conversation. At this, the mage suggests he could act like a child with him to practice. Gang Yu is completely horrified by the suggestion, wondering what he was talking about. But the mage laughs and says it's a joke, as he had never seen him make that expression before. He says that if things get tough, Gang Yu can vent to him, but the hero refuses the offer. The scene abruptly changes to a place in flames with Sung Won smiling in the midst of the chaos. Gang Yu was there too, observing the scene of complete destruction with an empty gaze. Then he has terrible flashbacks, remembering all his fallen comrades on the ground. The pain is so great that he screams at the sky, crying tears of pure blood. The mage was also on the brink of death and calls Gang Yu's name with difficulty. Even injured, he tries to calm the hero, saying that in the end, everything would be alright. Back in the present, the narration explains that it was with this fury that he broke the barriers. Now, only the mage's last barrier remained, protecting the two terrified sisters. Suddenly, a spiritual projection of the mage appears as a final act of defense. Gang Yu faces the mage's projection with an extremely serious and determined look. Suddenly, Officer G is trapped by threads of energy, becoming scared and confused. He then turns to her, now enveloped by his power, and calls her by name. Gang Yu asks if she can also read the memories stored within abilities. At that, he points to the barrier and asks her to read that ability for him immediately. He explains that he needs to know what the mage was thinking, leaving the officer surprised. She then reveals the mage's memory with the two sisters in the palm of her hand. He finds the image quite unpleasant, but the officer comments that she found the scene cute. He then asks why the memories of those murderers were also appearing there. Gang Yu explains that the ability was used on them and that he didn't show it on purpose. He says he's just warning her not to get any wrong ideas about the situation. With a cold look, he states that no matter what happened, he will still execute them. The memory then shows the mage hugging the two girls with a very worried look. Officer G just nods her head, understanding the order he gave. She then prepares to begin, and the image of the mage with the sisters becomes clearer. The scene shifts to a flashback showing a luxurious hall, but with cages instead of chairs. With a strike of the gavel, the auctioneer gets everyone's attention. He then announces the start of an auction of ability users to the wealthy audience. It's revealed that this place was a hell, where people were sold like merchandise. Among the prisoners were the sisters, Meal and Meal, trapped together in a dark cell. And at that time, they were both only 6 years old. We're told about the Underworld Auction, an event where VIPs collect rare abilities. We discover that Meal and Melia were sold to this horrible place by their own father. The most expensive and sought-after types were the special and body transformation ones. The summoner type, however, was the most common of all, and therefore ended up being very cheap. The sisters hid their real power, so they were almost discarded by the sellers. But a man appears at their cell, announcing that someone finally wants to buy them both. The auctioneer then confirms if they are the girls who summon an angel and a demon. He asks for the reason for the purchase as they don't accept returns, but the buyer deflects the question. With a cruel smile, she reveals she wanted to see the result of crossing an angel and a demon. She says the girls will soon find out what she meant with a frightening look in her eyes. The camera focuses on her eye, showing that her intentions were the worst imaginable. Suddenly, she and the seller look up, hearing a very strange noise. A gigantic explosion occurs, completely destroying the ceiling of the auction hall. It turns out the entire city above the location was blown to bits. The scene ends by showing the city in ruins, covered by a cloud of dust. The auctioneer and the buyer are completely shocked, wondering what that was. Then one of the sisters asks the other if she's okay, both confused by the situation. They look around and realize that everyone was saved by individual energy bubbles. The two sisters look up in awe, seeing who was responsible for all of it. That's when the hero Mago appears in the sky with his assistant, revealing himself as their savior. With a smug smile, Mago says that it was all just magic. His assistant, Lipis, gets annoyed by the scene and yells Mago's name. She complains that he teaches too fast, but he says she'll get there with effort. Mago asks if she did what he asked, and she confirms she saved everyone there. Then, he suggests another lesson, but she despairs, thinking it's impossible to summon a meteor. But their conversation is cut short as someone gets their attention. The sisters then approach and plead for him to take them with him. They say they are also summoner types, trying to convince the hero to take them. At this, Lipis says he promised to be hers alone, but he denies it, leaving her shocked. He then asks the girls to show their abilities, and Lipis calls him a liar. The girls then show their powers, summoning an angel and a demon right there in front of them. Lipis is shocked by the summons since normal children usually just summon toys. But Mago finds it interesting as the girls' power has piqued his curiosity. So he decides to take them on as his students, and the two run to hug him tightly. The scene jumps forward 3 years with Mago teaching that imagination is the key to summoning. He explains that the image they hold in their minds is what will appear with the ability. In Meal's case, who summons the angel, the inspiration came from her mother who protected everyone. As for Meal, who summons the demon, she was influenced by her father who was always very violent. Mago says that if they see the world differently, they can summon many things. But he also says it's fine to focus on just one thing, like the rabbit over there. He then asks which direction the two of them intend to take with their powers from now on. They reply that their interest lies in heaven and hell, leaving both of them very surprised. We're told their mother said that good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell. These were the words that gave the two of them the strength to carry on after everything. Therefore, they want to fix the world, sending the good to heaven and the bad to hell. Mago says he's sure they will succeed because they are kinder than anyone else. But the peace doesn't last long because one day, something unexpected happens in the city. Lipis appears, running and yelling his name with a very worried expression on her face. She informs him that the Hero Association is asking for his help on an urgent mission. He gets annoyed because they ignored his proposal, and now they're asking for a favor. Then she reveals that the villain, Aswade, has suddenly appeared in Finland. Mago is in total shock, his eyes wide, unable to believe what he just heard. He says the equality group needs to act, but not even Lipis knows what they're doing. With his hand on his head, he becomes very frustrated with the other heroes' lack of action. After thinking for a moment, he asks Lipis to bring Meal and Mael to him. The girls arrive with sad faces and ask if it's true that he's leaving. One of them hugs him and begs him not to go, asking when he'll come back home. He explains that the enemy is strong and the fight could take a few years to end. They ask to go with him, but he refuses, saying the opponent is far too dangerous. The girl cries, saying she doesn't want him to go, which leaves Mago quite shaken. The girl cries and screams that she doesn't want to be abandoned again, afraid of being left alone, but Mago comforts her, saying they aren't objects to be thrown away. He then gives them a gift, explaining that the symbol on their clothes guarantees help at shelters. Mago says goodbye and asks them to grow up to be good people as they will meet again one day. It's explained that out of fear, they didn't go to a shelter and instead isolated themselves to train alone. They wonder what kind of power they need to become good people by the time they see him again. Alone, they begin to reflect on what good is, raising their hands to the sky. And they also think about what evil is, remembering their opposing summons. With this, they question what they should do with the abilities they possessed. The scene jumps forward 2 years, showing they've decided what is good and evil on their own. The two then decide to return to their hometown, the place where it all began for them. Their philosophy was simple. Good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell. And so they began to create their own heaven and hell, judging everyone in the city. With sinister smiles, they reveal that this place has become their utopia. In just 1 month, the sisters transformed their hometown into their own version of a utopia. To do this, they summoned troops of angels and demons who watched over all the residents. These creatures observed the people for a month, deciding who would go to heaven or hell. It's explained that their standards for judgment were based on what their mother taught them. Simple rules like not stealing, not littering, and not lying to others. But because they were so young, their ideals were childish and overly simplistic. And this simplicity made everything even more terrifying because even those who passed the test were taken. One of the sisters then says with a smile that the person being watched lived a good life. Even as the mother and her son begged to be left alone, she tells them not to be afraid. She then explains that they aren't going to die as an angel pierces the woman with its hand. In reality, they will just have a happy dream in heaven, leaving the woman in despair. And the sister adds that this dream will last for all eternity. News of this twisted utopia eventually spread throughout the entire continent. It wasn't long before the rumor finally reached the ears of the Hero Association. In a dark room, one of the directors prepares to take action on the matter. The president of the Hero Association, Authority, announces the start of the meeting with a serious look. He then pauses, preparing to discuss the cases on the table. Noticing the half-empty room, he asks if these are the only members participating. A heroine named Bonzo replies that the rest of the team must be on vacation or something. At that, the hero Kusta asks him to get straight to the point as he's hoping for an interesting case. But upon seeing the panels, he's very disappointed with what's presented at the meeting. Kusta complains that the cases are B1 level and he needs B2 missions to rank up. The president offers a B3 case, but Bonjo says it's not efficient to take on something so difficult. But she notices one of the files, an expression of pure suspicion on her face. She then asks why a case from a rural village is appearing on the list. The president explains that the 2 girls have been classified as B1 level villains. The heroes then speculate that they might become B2 or B3 level villains in the future. The president says that will take a long time, but that he has an important observation to make. He reveals that the 2 girls are apprentices of the legendary hero, Mago. Kusta is shocked by the news, but Bonjo smiles, saying she understands everything now. Bonjo suggests that Mago should handle it, but Kusta informs them that he went to Finland to fight. The president remains silent until a hand rises, asking to speak at the meeting. Then the heroine, Kuthu, a summoner, offers to go on this mission in his place. The scene cuts to Kuthu arriving in the city on her super stylish pink motorcycle. She takes off her helmet and is stunned by the sight before her. The sky was filled with red and golden halos, creating a bizarre scene. Through a viewing sphere, the sisters realized that an intruder has just arrived. Male tells male there's an invader and the 2 watch the heroine. Thu scans the area with her bright eyes, trying to understand what was going on. To capture the moment, she even takes a selfie with one of the nearby angels. She notices the angels and demons weren't dead, but seemed to be sleeping. Suddenly, senses a strange presence and turns her head, realizing she's not alone. Just then, the 2 sisters appear before her, an unfriendly look on their faces. They stare at her with contempt and call her an outsider, making the atmosphere tense. One of them then asks what she came here to do, wanting to know the reason for her visit. Kuthu gets super excited by what she sees, clapping her hands and finding it all incredible. She comments that special powers are very useful and asks if they can do anything else. But then she changes the subject, saying that first of all, they need to answer a question. Tutu asks if Mago knows they're special since he only accepts summoners. The sisters are shocked by the question and the heroine realizes they haven't told him. Terrified by the situation, the two ask who she is and what she wants there. The camera focuses on their eyes, showing pure panic as they face the mysterious heroine. With a sinister smile, she introduces herself as Kuthu, their forgotten senior. They deny it, saying their only senior is Lippies, and Kuthu realizes she's been erased. One of the sisters tenses up, sensing that this girl's story was not a good one. Kuthu then explains that she was always very interested in sharp and dangerous things. She explains that Mago told her to train her defense, but she didn't listen because that wasn't her thing. After that, he stopped paying attention to her and she calls him mean. The scene changes, and Kuthu repeats that Mago is a very, very mean person to her. At this, she has a breakdown and starts crying, screaming non-stop that he's so mean. One of the sisters is terrified by her outburst, telling the other that Kuthu is scary. But the heroine keeps crying, remembering how Mago always praised her talent. Seeing that he's forgotten her, the sisters prepare to fight, creating a magical shield. One of them warns her to leave now or things will get ugly. Just then, Kuthu displays her absurd power, summoning a rain of sharp weapons from the sky. The two sisters panic and scream desperately, telling her to stop, but the heroine doesn't listen. And the weapons come crashing down, destroying the scenery. The result is a massacre, and Kuthu wonders what will happen if she does this. With a sick smile, Kuthu says that this way, Mago will remember her again. The scene shifts to a massacre, a dark power destroying everything in its path. The heroine, Kuthu, laughs maniacally, loving the chaos she's created. Her face stained with blood, she calls this pure euphoria. Meanwhile, little Meal is terrified, frozen in fear. She runs to her sister, Meal, asking if she's okay after the attack. It's revealed that the villain had already defeated several enemies, creating a dome of energy. The twins look up in shock, wondering what this red barrier is. But Thu ignores them, focusing on the thrilling sensation of annihilating her targets. She opens her arms and screams that this is way more fun than she ever imagined. Thu stares down one of her victims, saying she wants to feel that rush again. With a sadistic smile, she prepares to strike with even more fervor than before. Just then, the villain fires at the girls, but a magic shield appears to protect them. She's surprised by what she sees, letting out a wow in admiration of their power. It turns out the twins combined their strength to create a powerful defense magic. The villain praises their technique, saying they learned well from their master. The villain says their defense was good, but activates a magic circle to counterattack. With a sadistic look, Thu summons a giant stone golem to crush them. She then warns them that their attacks need to improve a lot to defeat her. Furious, Male screams that the villain will definitely go to hell for this. Thu explains she's always wanted to use her ability in a crowded place like this, but she couldn't as she'd be arrested despite being a heroine, and thanks them for the opportunity. With an evil smile, she says she can now finally unleash her ultimate power. Her eyes roll back as she begins to channel an insane amount of energy, sweating from the effort. The twins despair, screaming in terror as the villain releases her summon. From the sky, a giant stiletto begins to emerge, descending at high speed. Exhausted, Thu says she did it because the power of imagination is what matters most. It's explained that the thrill of killing people strengthened her imagination and her power. The summoned weapon is gigantic, and the villain admits she's never summoned anything this big. She's impressed by her own power, admiring the size of her creation. With blood streaming from her eyes, Kuthu smiles and says, "This is so cool." She thanks the two girls because it's thanks to them that she achieved all this power. Then the villain bids them farewell as her summon prepares to devour them. But to everyone's surprise, little Marel manages to defeat the villain's monster. It turns out the girl experienced the same emotion and now sees her enemy as a demon. This horrific vision of Kuthu ended up strengthening Mael's own summoning ability. Her sister, Mael, is frightened. Seeing that the look in the girl's eyes has completely changed, Mel stares at the body in shock, wondering if she actually killed a person. But a mysterious voice answers that she didn't, leaving the girl slightly relieved. The voice explains that she didn't kill a human, but a demon that threatened everyone. The scene jumps forward 1 year, showing the twins have continued using their powers. It's revealed they've created a giant utopia, a place that belongs only to them. Because of this, the two were registered as a new case at the Hero Association. They were classified as B2 villains, imprisoned on level 2 of Rookulus prison. Seeing their file, Mago is shocked, unable to believe they are his former students. President Utterty questions Mago about what happened, and the hero replies that's what he wants to know. Mago says he needs to go to the prison now, but the president forbids him. Outraged, he asks why, and Utterty informs him that this case won't be his. The president explains that Mago disobeyed him in the past, so he won't get his way anymore. The hero gets angry and says there's no point in talking, declaring he's going anyway. But Utterty grabs his wrist tightly and repeats that he absolutely cannot go. Unleashing his powerful aura, the president reinforces his order, preventing Mago from leaving. Mago then breaks free with his own magic and yells that Utterty is an obsessed maniac. The two face off with their auras activated, ready for a clash of powers. Just then, a mysterious heroine appears watching their argument from the top of the stairs. She introduces herself as Rausa, a third-rank heroine, and says she'll take the mission. Ator agrees, but Mago insists on going, saying the mission is his by right. The heroine then asks for his name as her eye begins to glow intensely. The heroine Rausa approaches Mago and asks him to trust her with this mission. The scene cuts to the utopia created by the twins with crowns floating all over the city. Inside a building, Meal calls out to her sister, Meal, sensing that something is wrong. Just then, Meal warns that an intruder approaching their hideout. They become anxious as the person who has arrived this time seems to be very powerful. The heroine, Rausa, walks calmly through the streets surrounded by an energy barrier. With a serious look, she wonders how many sins the two girls have already committed. The heroine pushes forward with determination, ready to face any challenge that comes her way. But when she arrives, she sees 3 people floating, controlled by an evil force. She realizes they're the heroes who came for this mission before, but at least they're still alive. Their bodies float in the air like puppets for the 2 little girls. The twins then ask who the intruder is and why she has come here. The heroine replies that her name is Rausa and she came to take them back. The girls get annoyed, wondering why another hero has shown up to bother them. Then, Mael activates a magic circle, preparing to summon a dark creature. She summons a giant terrifying demon, which appears to attack the heroine with everything it's got. The girl then yells for the heroine to get out of there right now before it's too late, but Rausa replies that it's fine. She'll leave, which confuses the twins. With a smile, she says that in return, she wants them to come back with her. Suddenly, the heroine summons a creature of light, which easily captures the twins. She stands before them, showing that her power far superior to theirs. Ryosa explains that they are good kids, since she didn't sense any killing intent in their attack. The heroine says this is sad because if good heroes had come, none of this would have happened. She then walks toward the twins, who desperately scream for her not to get any closer. Ryosa tells them not to be afraid, calmly assuring them that she won't hurt either of them. But she explains that what they're doing isn't right and that their teacher is sad. Upon hearing the news, the girls' eyes fill with astonishment and a bit of hope. Meal asks if Professor Mago has returned, but Meal yells not to believe those lies. Then, the heroine assures them she isn't lying, extending a hand toward the 2 of them. She asks them to release their power and come with her because it's time to meet their master. The twins look at each other and feel a warmth coming from Rausa, deciding to trust her. She then takes their hands and begins to guide them out of that dark utopia. With a smile on her face, the heroine looks back and sees that Mago is there. She says she already knew he would follow her here, leaving the girls surprised. The 2 run to hug their professor, who is relieved to see they're okay. Crying, they tell him they had special abilities, but their mother told them to hide them. They apologize for lying, as they know he only trains apprentice summoners. Meal asks who told them that because a heroine named Kuthu introduced herself as his apprentice. Surprised, Mago says his only apprentices were them and Lippus, no one else. He explains that he only met Kuthu once at the association and just gave her some advice. The girls are speechless, and Mago hugs them tightly after 3 long years. It's explained that they talked about everything that had happened during their time apart. They share how they tried to be good, but people didn't understand their efforts. Mago remained silent for a while, just watching the 2 of them resting on the grass. Then Rausa approaches and asks if he's finished talking with the girls. He then asks Rausa to trust him and let him take care of the 2 of them from now on. But the heroine reminds him that they killed a hero, and for that, they could face the death penalty. Mago begs for a chance, but Rausa replies that she absolutely can't do that. She looks at the sleeping girls and questions if they are really just innocent children. The heroine says she also disagrees with authorities' new law, but the law is the law. Desperate, Mago tries to argue, but she says that's not a hero's job. But then she reveals that she felt the same way he did, and that the world is full of problems. The heroine looks Mago in the eye, preparing to make an important proposal. She then invites him to work with her from now on to change everything. But he's confused, not understanding what this proposal has to do with the two girls. With a determined look, Rouza replies that she's going to change the world one way or another. Mago then says he has one condition for accepting her crazy proposal. He asks that they don't let the twins die and that they allow him to use his ability on them. The heroine thinks for a moment but ends up agreeing to Mago's request. He then uses his magic to protect the girls, ensuring they won't die until they're adults. The narration explains that they are going to change the world as the scene focuses on guard Gangyu. His partner, Jiahong, finds him on the floor and asks if he's okay, but he doesn't answer. The scene cuts to the past showing Seo Gangyu, who is the story's protagonist. It's revealed that Rao Sa went to him, saying she'd heard great things about him from Gang Ho. With a smile, she extends her hand and asks if he wants to change the world with her. The scene returns to the present with Gang Yu standing alone in the dark prison hallway. He remembers the mission. Seeing the image of Mago and the girls in his mind, Mila tries to defend herself, saying they only judge people by their own rules. She then asks what the difference is between them and the heroes who follow the law. Jiahong explains that they were tasked with rehabilitating children, but she says she's not making excuses for them and that they need to understand their mistakes. At that moment, Gangyu starts gathering a dangerous red energy in his hand. He slowly approaches the girls, releasing an aura that terrifies them. They cling to each other tightly, feeling the crushing pressure of his power in the air. With tear-filled eyes, they beg him to please spare their lives. But the guard floats toward them, preparing to deliver the final blow. Desperate, they scream that they were wrong and that they regret everything they've done. Gangyu ignores their screams and clenches his fist, concentrating all his power there. The girls cry and call out for their mother and their professor, begging for any help they can get. Suddenly, Mago's protection appears, creating a golden shield in front of them. But Gangyu shatters the barrier with a single punch, showing it's useless. He then strikes the ground with full force, causing an explosion right in front of them. The twins cry in fear, not understanding what's really happening here. With a face full of anger, Gangyu says that this is really irritating him. He then recalls several thoughts as the girls remain huddled on the floor, but suddenly they are blown to pieces. His eyes glow in intense red, showing that he's losing control of himself. Then, a dark, evil laugh begins to echo throughout the dark place. A strange vision appears, showing Sinka descending from a portal. Gangyu then looks up, seeing pieces of cloth falling slowly from the sky. Sinka asks why he needs to think so much before taking action. She says that overthinking doesn't suit his personality at all. Gangyu is shocked to hear this as the woman remarks that he's quite handsome. With a terrifying smile, she greets him, calls him my husband, and says that his bride has arrived. Sinka tries to introduce herself, but Gangyu attacks her with full force. Canis blocks the attack. Canis warns him that it's rude not to listen, but Sinka scolds him, saying Gangyu will be his new master soon. She then clears her throat and says she'll introduce herself again more calmly. But as soon as she opens her mouth, Gangyu attacks again without a second thought. Sinka says he's very impatient as a barrier protects her group. She then suggests they talk for a bit since they'll be seeing each other for a long time. With a smile, she finally introduces herself. Her name is Sinka, the manipulator. It's revealed that she is the woman who will become the Eve of the new humanity. Gangyu is confused by this story and asks what she means by Eve. She confirms excitedly, but the guard just replies that he's tired of this conversation. He thinks a lunatic has shown up and that he's mentally exhausted from all of this, but Sinka defends herself, saying she's actually the sanest person in the world. Sinka asks Gangyu if he knows humanity is in a dangerous situation. She says the human race is degenerating. She warns that at this rate they will all be extinct very soon. Then, the villain asks who he thinks the real threat to humanity is. She reminds him that he was part of the equality group which fought for an ideal. Sinka says he probably thinks it's the villains or the heroes of the past. She yells that this answer is completely wrong and that he doesn't get it. Gangyu sighs tiredly as she explains what is truly destroying humanity. She reveals it's the normal people and that their genes need to be eliminated. Sinka explains that only those with superior genes should create the new generations. But because of the sacrifice of the strongest, the weak genes have multiplied greatly. She then uses the second-generation heroes led by Ryosa as an example. Sinka questions why they died since they tried to prevent natural selection. She says Gongyu is no longer a hero as he's already killing those with weak genes. With a passionate look, she confesses that she was captivated by him when she saw that scene. Sinka explains that Rookulus Prison is the meeting point for the new humanity. It's the place where superior humans were imprisoned for killing the weaker ones. She says that after they get rid of the heroes and the inferior humans, they will build a world with only strong people, the so-called Alpha world. But she adds that if the strong heroes join them, they can be part of the new humanity. Gongyu replies that he tries not to kill anyone who isn't a real criminal. But now, it seems like killing everyone will be unavoidable to solve the situation. Senka misunderstands and gets embarrassed, but Gato tells her that's not it. Canis tells Gato to shut up, but Senka decides to talk about it later. She then clears her throat to continue her speech, ignoring the earlier confusion. With a serious look, she points to Gangyu and says he will be the atom. And right after, she points to herself, saying she will be the Eve. The villain explains that their children will lead the evolution of humanity. She then confesses that at first, she thought Sung Hwan was the atom and saved him. Hearing that name, Gung Yu's eye twitches, showing he's very irritated. Sinka explains that the prison security is stronger than she imagined. So after they got the internal blueprints, they came up with a very different plan. They used a custom EMP, blowing everything up from the inside with her special ability. Gongyu is confused by the acronym, and she says she talked to Sung Hwan afterward. She explains that the boy hasn't matured yet, and his ability needs more time. But she says time is precious, so she found a brilliant solution. Her plan is to work with Gongyu, and after Sung Hwan grows up, with him too. The solution she found was a way to pass on both of their superior genes. With a victorious smile, she celebrates her incredible idea to save humanity. She says the two of them can become a family, finally reconciling with the past. The villain then asks if he understood everything she's been saying, but Gangyu ignores everything and asks if they were the ones who caused the EMP attack. She gets flustered, saying she was referring to the other things she explained. Sinka reminds him that his brother died and invites him to build a family with her. She asks for his decision, and Gangyu replies that he decided a long time ago. Gangyu takes back what he said because just killing them now seems like too little. He warns that he will make their deaths the slowest and most painful of all. With immense hatred, he promises to break every single bone in their bodies. Sinka's group is in shock, unable to believe the threat they just heard. But Gangyu isn't kidding, and his gaze shows pure vengeance. Sinka sees this as a lover's quarrel, saying it's a way for them to get to know each other better. Gangyu charges at Sinka with everything he's got, unleashing all his pent-up fury. The villainess finds it amusing, but Canis realizes the situation has just gotten very dangerous. He then strikes with a swift blow that grazes the crazy woman's face, but she suddenly creates a portal, preparing to escape the fight. Seeing her escape, Gongyu becomes even more enraged, hatred written all over his face. He then extends his hand and uses his power to try and stop their escape. The hero warns that he only needs a second to wipe them all out. Sinka enters the portal and invites him to settle this outside, giving a little wave. She even tells him to cool his head a bit before coming after the group. With that, the portal closes completely, leaving the hero behind in the hallway. But Gangyu doesn't give up and prepares to go after them no matter what. His eyes glow intensely, showing he won't let this insult slide. Suddenly, a pillar of red energy shoots up from the prison, tearing through the sky. The attack hits Sinka's group head-on, catching them all by surprise. He then glares at his enemies with a serious look, ready to begin his revenge. Sinka is impressed by the attack's power, letting out a surprised wow. The red energy explodes in the shape of a cross, showcasing the devastating force of the blow. The attack strikes the group dead on, sending Sinka flying back from the impact. At that, Gangyu lets out a wicked laugh as his plan has worked so far. The scene changes, and now they are on a balcony, calmly observing the hero from above. He then leaps toward them, and Sinka says it feels like hide and seek. With that, the protagonist lands hard on the ground, releasing a wave of energy. The impact of his landing is so powerful, it creates a giant crater in the prison floor. But Sinka appears in a small portal, sticking her tongue out and making a face at him. She tells him the portal has already closed and dares him to catch her if he can. Seeing this, Gang Yu activates Mode 1 and his hand begins to transform. Sinka recognizes the technique, saying it's the same one he used in Sublevel 1. He then charges at her with his claw, delivering a super powerful strike. The guard yells with effort as he breaks through the barrier and grabs an energy orb. Then Senka's face appears in the portal, and he's surprised by what he's managed to do. Senka panics at being caught off guard, asking him to wait a moment. At that, Ganyu pulls her with his claw, pure hatred in his eyes. But out of nowhere, Gato appears from behind and holds him back, stopping the final attack. He then lets out a meow, acting very strangely in the middle of the fight. Senka yells at Gato, asking why he got in their way now, but Gato warns her that she would have died if Gangyu had caught her. Just then, Gato is hit head-on, thrown back with great violence. His body begins to transform into a beast, revealing his true form. Sinka and Canis are shocked, seeing the prison guard's absurd power. He stands alone amidst the destruction, the ground completely cracked by his power. He then glares at the villainess and asks if she saw that, proving he wasn't kidding. Gato repeats that he warned her and that she would have died if he had truly caught her. Sinka asks what to do about the life she lost, and Gato asks for a decision. Gangyu prepares to fight, saying it's time to use his true power. But Gato laments the life Sinka lost, which makes her very angry. She starts to cry because those genes were too precious to end up like this. Ignoring the villainess, Gangyu activates Mode 5, releasing several spheres of energy. Sinka then uses her ability, creating multiple dimensions to attack the guard. The hero is caught by surprise, seeing several portals opening on the battlefield. He's shocked as he didn't expect the enemy to have such a bizarre power. Then, Sinka announces that this is the new humanity that will rule everything from now on. The scene shifts to a city in flames, revealing the new villains from Sublevel 3. First is Asueda, who laments the mage's death as he wanted to kill him himself. Next is Ho, a physical type, who asks who will be the lucky one to tame her. The next one is Frichua, an old man who wonders if he's still needed for the fight. But Natura replies that he is because everything in this world has a purpose. There's also little Pekaninu who keeps repeating that she's very scared. And finally, Vidi, who is inspired by Gangyu to create a new work of art. Little Morris complains, saying Vidi is rude for smoking outside the designated area. Next, Xingshi appears screaming non-stop, leaving the monster Tiburon very confused. Meanwhile, Hyunju Young laughs because there are people there far worse than any demon. The scene changes and shows us criminals from Sublevel B4 of the prison. Tatsu Jean realizes her scabbard is empty, surprised to have lost her weapon. At that, Stiffness points at her, saying that useless people like her depend on weapons. Terrapir then wonders if prisoner number 4 is still alive out there. Maledetai celebrates, saying she knew these clothes would be much more comfortable. Meanwhile, the mysterious hero remains silent, just observing everyone's movements. Gang Yu's eye glows intensely as he analyzes each of these new dangerous enemies. He then stares at a portal where the silhouettes of 2B5 grade criminals suddenly appear. The first to appear is a whore, a special type, who regards everything with seriousness. But suddenly, Huang Sung-wan screams Gang Yu's name with a psychopathic smile. Then Sung-wan appears holding a red ball, glancing sideways at his old rival. Then Gang Yu activates Mode 0, revealing his old dark hero suit. His eyes glow with a white light, showing that things just got serious. Seeing the transformation, Sung-wan breaks into a huge grin and shouts that the game is about to begin. Gang Yu then charges forward, rushing at Sung-wan with everything he's got, and Sung-wan yells that he wants to play again. Amid the destruction, Gang Yu Seo unleashes his power, transforming into a terrifying red creature. Just then, Sung-wan Huang appears with an insane smile, holding a red orb of energy. The creature then charges at Sung-wan, who falls towards it, seemingly defenseless. Suddenly, gigantic explosion of red and blue energy destroys everything around them. A deafening roar, one that seemed capable of swallowing everything, echoes through the prison. The sound spreads throughout the entire facility, making the whole place tremble violently. 2 female prisoners watch from a distance, and one of them comments that it's a barbaric way to fight. But Ho, with a smile, says she hopes no one got hurt in the shockwave. Elsewhere, a guard desperately screams the director's name, calling for Se Yun-jo. He warns that they need to get out of there now, but the director remains frozen in shock. She can't believe the scene, wondering how things got to this point. Back in the fight, Gangyu, in his monstrous form, looks exhausted after the massive attack. This transformation is called Zero Mode, a display of his true power. Far away, the hero is informed that the criminals on the lower floors have all been captured, but he reflects that no one saw Gangyu fight, and now he understands why Ryausa stopped him. Observing the immense power, Terrapir defines Gangyu's aura with a single word, death. Everyone there felt as if death itself had manifested before them. With his eyes shining, Vidi comments that the scene is so incredible, it's giving him inspiration. Meanwhile, Stiffness breaks into a psychopathic grin, completely mesmerized by the man's power. Aswide grows frustrated, realizing it's a special ability, and he won't be able to steal it. Amid the chaos, Sinka cries, wondering why he made this decision. And amidst all these different feelings, one figure stands out. With a smile of pure joy, Seo screams Seo Gangyu's name. He asks why Gangyu didn't show him this technique when they fought before. He then rushes forward and praises Gangyu, saying he's truly incredible. Gangyu's monstrous form moves like a blur, advancing in the blink of an eye. But Chungwon taunts him, saying he still has more tricks up his sleeve. In a close-up, Gangyu's eyes glow, showing he hasn't used everything yet. Suddenly, multiple blasts of blue energy hit the monster's body head-on, and we see that Sungwon doesn't stop attacking, proving he's powerful too. Gangyu's monstrous form is fully revealed, emanating an aura of pure destruction. Then he shoots towards Sungwon, but Sungwon manages to block the attack. He then reveals he had already prepared his defense, anticipating his enemy's move. We learn that he has condensed space, trapping Gangyu with his ability. With that, the accumulated energy explodes, creating a blue impact that devastates the arena. Maledetai is shocked, saying he's this strong without even using physical combat. She reflects that he's still a minor and wonders what he'll become when he grows up. Sung Hwan then shouts, questioning how much more of a monster his opponent can become. After the smoke clears, he yells, asking where Gangyu went, knowing that wouldn't defeat him. He panics and starts shouting again, refusing to believe the fight is over. Suddenly, Gangyu appears and lands a devastating punch to his face. Caught off guard by the blow, Shungwon has no time to react and spits blood from the force. Without giving him a moment to breathe, Gangyu smashes him into the ground. The impact of the punch is so strong, it creates a devastating red shock wave. From a distance, Xingxi is terrified and comments that this is a true battle of monsters. The monster Tiburon agrees with her as beams of energy slice past them. Now Gangyu's monstrous form faces a new opponent, Natura, who is waiting for him. Without hesitation, he charges forward at high speed, ready to finish off another enemy. His eyes glow with intensity, showing he's completely focused on the fight. But Natura creates a defensive magic, commenting that the mage's technique was a work of art. Seeing this, Gangyu taunts him, asking if he feels nostalgic seeing his former colleague's magic. He then starts attacking the barrier, which slowly cracks under his blows. The shield breaks, and Asuwadi admits with a smile that he's very envious of that strength. With one final attack, the barrier shatters completely, clearing the path for Gangyu. But suddenly, the hero appears and blocks his advance. Meanwhile, Gangyu seems to be feeling the fatigue, showing the toll of using so much power. Song Hwan gives a clear order, telling him to stop immediately. With a sick smile, he says that Seo Gangyu is there to play with him. But he comments that no matter how he looks at it, Gangyu seems to be hiding something. He then taunts him, asking if he's holding back because of the prison officials. Realizing this won't work, he announces he's going to create a playground just for the two of them. With that, his hand begins to be covered by a dark, distorted aura. The scene then cuts to outside the prison, showing a starry and seemingly calm night. Suddenly, sky begins to twist, creating a dark and sinister vortex of energy. Down below, director Sei Yoon-jo and a guard look up, not understanding what's happening. She screams in terror, wondering what has appeared this time. Even Gang Ho Seo, who is in another area, looks up in complete shock. He can't believe what he's seeing as the sky cracks open right in front of him. Back to the fight, Gangyu warns that from now on, playtime is over. With a shriek of pure euphoria, Sung Hwan tells them to go all out and play for real. The guards and the director panic, screaming in fear at the scene. And in the next instant, a bluish energy explosion destroys the entire prison. Amidst the rubble, director Si Eun-jo screams in terror at what's happening. Then, red energy tentacles trap her and she panics, not understanding what they are. Several red spheres of power begin to appear, destroying everything around the prison. The orbs then merge and fly towards a blue energy, causing an explosion. With a smile, Sung-won remarks that the place is quite durable despite all the attacks. From Song-won's perspective, Gang Yu's monstrous form prepares for its next move. Suddenly, Sinka opens a portal and Gang Yu steps through it. But Sinka appears and interferes in the fight using her own ability from a distance. With a wicked grin, she warns that people shouldn't be interrupted when using their powers. Morris then suggests they get out of there as the place is too dusty. Ignoring the chaos, Tatsujin crouches down and touches the ground, which begins to glow. Morris is surprised by her action, wondering what she plans to do. It's revealed that Tatsujin is concentrating energy, and a strange symbol appears in her eye. She then stands up, and her sword begins to glow, showing that she's going to fight too. Senka turns to Tatsujin and asks what she thinks she's doing. With a purple glow on her sword, Tatsujin prepares to force her way through. Seeing this, Senka is impressed by the girl's boldness, letting out a wow. But Canis tells her not to waste her strength since Senka has already opened a portal for them. The scene shifts to a busy street where everyone is looking up, completely shocked by something. It's revealed that Gang Yu has appeared in the middle of the street in his red battle form. But the next moment, he vanishes, and the people wonder what that was. Far away, Gang Yu appears in the sky, questioning if he's become a villain now. He then uses his power to create a gigantic meteor-sized sphere of rock. Atop the sphere, Sung-won appears, floating, and stares down at Gang Yu below. With a maniacal smile, he fires a massive blast of blue energy downward. The attack completely destroys the rock sphere in an explosion that covers the entire sky. Amidst the debris, Sung-won is in free fall, but he lands on the ground and starts walking as if the attack didn't even scratch him. In the dust, Gang Yu kneels, looking exhausted after using so much power. But even injured, his gaze is still filled with hatred, staring down his enemy without backing down. From a distance, Sinka's group watches the two fighters in the middle of the giant crater. With a smile, Sinka warns that no one should interfere. They will just watch. The reason why the criminals from floors B3 and B4 obey Sinka is explained. The scene cuts to a flashback where Stiffness faces Sinka, who introduces herself to him. She then looks at him and says with a smile that she will grant all his wishes. The word she used to convince everyone was exactly that, desires. It's revealed that Sinka used the criminal's desires, a feeling every human has. By doing so, she managed to get them all to join her alpha world. But there was another very important reason why they accepted her proposal. In another flashback, a sweetie asks Sinka what would happen if he refused. With a cold gaze, she replies that it's sad, but the consequence is quite simple. Basically, anyone who refused her offer would simply die, leaving them little choice. And the other reason was Sung Hwan Huang, who lets out a completely mocking laugh. In the flashback, Canis questions Sung Hwan, asking if her plan is about a new humanity. Sung Hwan then finds it interesting that she wants to marry Gang for that reason, but Sung Hwan quickly interrupts him, warning that there's a problem with all of this. With a sadistic look, Sung Hwan says that fighting Gang Yu is much more interesting. Sinka yells at him, saying he'll become a dopamine addict if he thinks that way. She asks what other fun he would have if he killed Gang Yu, but he says it's fine. With a smile, he explains that he's going to die in the end anyway, so it's all good. Sinka then suggests having a child with Gang Yu and then another with him. She explains that when they grew up, they could keep Sung Hwan entertained forever. And when the child became an adult, he would be even stronger, making the fight more fun. She finishes by saying that if he cooperates, he can have fun until the day he dies. Sung Hwan remains silent, carefully considering the girl's crazy proposal. With her eyes gleaming with expectation, Sinka eagerly awaits his answer. A faint smile then appears on Sung Hwan's face, showing he's made a decision. He agrees to try, saying it will be fun, and Sinka celebrates his response. Sinka celebrates his decision, but Sung Hwan interrupts her, saying there's a catch. He explains that he doesn't love her and asks how they could possibly get married in the future, but she replies that it's okay and that it won't be a problem for them. With a confident smile, she assures him that he will eventually fall in love with her over time. The scene then returns to the fight with Gang Yu charging at Sung Hwan with everything he's got. He lands a devastating punch that sends his enemy flying from the force of the impact. Sung Hwan takes the full force of the blow and ends up spitting some blood on the ground. But he gets up with a smile and comments that using only one hand wasn't going to cut it. He then taunts Gang Yu, asking if he's going to stay silent the whole time. Then, he asks if Gang Yu knows what the red orb he's holding is. With a wicked smile, he reveals that it is his brother, Gang Ho Seo. Upon hearing this, Gang Yu's eyes gleam with a hatred he has never felt before. He then lets out a roar of pure rage, showing that the taunt worked perfectly. Seeing his reaction, Sungwon realizes he can speak after all. At that moment, Gang Yu furiously charges at him. But Sungwon isn't fazed and uses his power to manipulate the surrounding rocks. With that, giant earthen spikes erupt from the ground, lunging straight for him. Gang Yu then prepares himself, concentrating his power for an even stronger attack. He then leaps and slams down, sinking the ground and creating a huge crater. Amidst the rubble, he gets up, his gaze fixed on his true target. His focus is now entirely on the red orb, completely ignoring Sungwon nearby. He stares at the sphere floating in the air, the most important thing to him right now. With a clenched fist, he prepares to strike the orb, but his hesitation is clear. He stops the blow at the last second, unable to destroy what's left of his brother. Suddenly, the orb strikes him, hitting Gang Yu head-on and at point-blank range. The attack throws him far back, showing that Sungwon is still in control. After firing, the orb returns to floating calmly as if nothing had happened. Sungwon then lets out a laugh, amused by his opponent's desperation. He taunts him with a smile, saying he knew he couldn't bring himself to attack it. Gang Yu gets up and says he just had a great idea to solve this. At this, Shung taunts him, asking if he won't be able to attack if he eats the orb. But he complains that it's too big and says he'll compress it a bit more. Without a second thought, Gang Yu charges forward and lands a kick right in his stomach. Sungwon screams in pain from the impact, spitting blood from the force of the blow. The blow knocks him to the ground, and Gang Yu takes the chance to jump on top of him. With a clenched fist full of hatred, he prepares to end the fight for good. He then smashes Sungwon into the ground, which shatters from the power of the attack. From a distance, the others watch it all, surprised by the boy's strength. Sungwon then grabs his arm, and suddenly, a blue energy traps him and explodes, showing it's not over yet. Out of nowhere, a pillar of blue light shoots into the sky, surprising Sinka's group. Gato looks at Sinka, who seems completely mesmerized by the scene. With her eyes shining, she whispers that it's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. Kanas laments that it would be nice if they made up, but the others agree that's never going to happen. With a serious look, he analyzes the situation and notices something important. Then, Sung Hwan warns that he thinks this fight is about to end. The scene then shows Sung Hwan on the ground, covered in blood and badly injured. But Gang Yu is also at his limit and he kneels on the ground back in his human form. Even exhausted, he stands up, approaching his enemy to deliver the final blow. Shung Hwan glares at him from the ground, showing he hasn't given up yet. Suddenly, tendrils of red energy sprout from the ground and trap Gang Yu. Sinka's group is surprised, and they wonder what that thing is that just appeared. They then look up and see a gigantic red sphere forming in the sky. From down below, Shung Wan lets out a laugh, amused by his opponent's power. He asks how many skills Gong Yu has, admitting it's impossible to defeat him. With a smile, he asks Seo Gong Yu what he thought of that new technique. Even on the ground, Gang Yu hears Chung Wan ask what it feels like to kill someone. He says Gang Yu must be disappointed, since it's not satisfying enough to release his emotions. Tired of the talk, Gang Yu tells him to shut up, but Chung Wan completely ignores him. He continues to taunt him, saying Gang Yu must have been frustrated suppress NG his powers. The reason for that, according to him, was having to travel with that bunch of trash. At this, Gang Yu slowly turns, facing his enemy with a look of pure hatred. He then replies with contempt, stating that Sung Hwan knows absolutely nothing. Sung Hwan admits that this is a dangerous skill, and that he's at his limit too. He then starts to wonder about the future, thinking about what comes next. The boy questions if he could defeat Gang Yu. If he became an adult like Sinka said, he stares at his opponent, waiting for an answer to his question about their future. But Gang Yu assures him that will never happen because Sung Hwan will die right here. Watching the scene, Sinka's group remains silent, awaiting the outcome of the fight. Suddenly, the red sphere begins to expand, releasing a frightening energy. Sinka panics and screams, wondering what's happening in there. Seeing the situation, Sinka uses her power and opens a purple portal in the middle of the sphere. Desperate, she screams Sung Hwan's name, trying to save him from the imminent attack. With the portal open, she prepares to rescue him, her face full of worry. But it's too late and Shengwan is pierced by several red energy spikes. In a close-up, we see the blades piercing through his chest, showing the brutality of the blow. But Gang Yu just watches the scene with a hateful gaze. Shengwan is completely impaled by the thorns, screaming in pain from the brutal attack. Seeing the scene from afar, Sinka panics and desperately screams his name. She then rushes to help him using her portal to appear beside his wounded body. She yells for someone to heal him now, but Terrapir appears and tells her to get out of the way. Calmly, he approaches and touches one of the thorns piercing the boy's body. He's shocked to see that Shengwan protected his vital points even in the midst of chaos. With a serious look, he praises the young man, saying his combat instincts are flawless. He finishes removing the thorns, and Sinka tries to wake up Shengwan, who is unconscious. Terrapir then looks at his arm and comments that this is a very unstable ability. From a distance, Tatsu, Jin, and Ho watch the scene, still stunned by the power. Terrapir then rejoins the others and asks what they're going to do with Seo Gongyu. He faces the group and asks what their next move should be. Hiro then replies that they need to kill the boy right there, but he's interrupted. Sinka turns to the group and says that before that, there's something she wants to do. Holding Sung Hwan, she says she'd like to talk to Gang Yu one last time. Gang Yu collapses to the ground, completely drained of strength after the intense fight. The scene shifts to a desolate place, and Gang Yu gets up, his eyes filled with hatred. He then finds his brother's orb on the ground and picks it up very carefully. Holding the orb, he stares at the object with an expression of pure sadness and pain. In a close-up, we see his wounded face and the orb that represents his brother's life. Suddenly, Sinka appears through a portal and calls Gang Yu by his name. She tries to convince him, saying it's not too late for him to join them. But Gang Yu doesn't listen, staring at her with power emanating from his hands. Seeing his refusal, Sinka says she really can't understand the boy's decision. Suddenly, Gang Yu's body is covered in a powerful golden energy. With that, a golden magic circle appears on the ground, signaling that negotiations are over. Azui warns them to kill him quickly before he can recover his energy. He then asks the rest of the group if anyone has any objections to the plan. We're shown that everyone there unanimously agrees with the decision without hesitation. Friachua feels sorry for the boy, but Pekaninu says she's more afraid of him alive. Natura says it's not so bad to become one with nature, but Maledetai complains about being hungry. With a smile, Stiffness thinks the boy will entertain him, but Vidi laments the tragic end. Ho jokes that Hyun Ju-young is scarier than demons, but he calls her a coward. Facing all his enemies, Gang isn't intimidated and tells them all to get out of his way. Suddenly, Hiro uses his ability and becomes giant, preparing to crush the boy. He then lands a devastating punch on the ground, which trembles from the force of the massive attack. The blow sinks Gang Yu into a crater, trapping him as he protects his brother's orb. With Hiro's attack as a signal, all the other criminals begin to attack Gang Yu. After taking a beating for a while, the boy wonders how much time has passed since it all began. The scene then shows Gang Yu on the ground, completely defeated and with no strength left to fight. Even after passing out, he continues to firmly hold the orb that represents his brother. Seeing that he isn't moving, Hiro approaches and says it's time to end this. He then raises his foot, preparing to deliver the final blow to the fallen boy. A bluish energy gathers in his leg, showing the destructive power of the final strike. With an intense glow, Hiro brings his foot down to crush Gang Yu once and for all. Suddenly, a hand appears out of nowhere, stopping Hiro's final attack. The hand is revealed to be Shengwan's. He calls out to Sinka while staring down Hiro. Sinka is surprised, and he reminds her that she said he would get stronger. He then turns to the others and announces that, for the first time in his life, he has a dream. With a scream and an insane smile, he says he really wants to defeat Seo Gongyu. Sinka is in shock at his declaration, her eyes wide with surprise. Asudi gets angry and yells to kill him now, but Sinka tells everyone to be quiet. She then gives the final order, telling everyone that they're leaving. With a frightening smile, she reminds them that everyone there promised to listen to what she said. After a brief silence, the group obeys and decides to leave, following her order. With that, several purple portals open, and the criminals begin to leave the area. Sinka asks if Sung Hwan needs help walking, but he says he's fine. Before leaving, he takes one last look back, his gaze serious and determined. He stares at Seo Gang Yu's body, which is still lying unconscious on the ground. As he moves away into the portal, he promises they will meet again in the future. It's explained that during the attack, 8 criminals from floor B3 escaped from the prison. In addition to them, 5 from B4 and 3 more from B5 also managed to escape. The scene then cuts to the prisoner Kingston, who is observing the battlefield from a distance. He starts to let out a loud, sinister laugh, seemingly enjoying the chaos. With that, he comments that the world is about to get a lot louder, and it's revealed that in the near future, Sinka would turn the world upside down. A little pink creature appears, saying something as if delivering important news. Then we see a girl crouching down, seemingly listening to the little creature's explanation. She looks a bit scared and says she's not ready yet, but it insists on talking. Suddenly, the image starts to glitch and distort like a faulty broadcast. Then a very bright light shines, signaling that something big is about to happen. We are then introduced to a new world which welcomes us. The scene cuts and Sinka appears smiling, introducing herself as the future Eve of humanity. She then shows her guests presenting Canis and also Gato beside her. Next, a question is raised asking what exactly the Alpha World is. Canis begins to explain, saying that the Alpha World will be built soon. He says the goal is to save humanity with Sinka in charge of everything. But then another question arises about who would have the right to enter this new world. Gato then begins to explain the conditions to be chosen. The first rule is clear. The person must have very strong skills and powers. The second condition is quite cruel. You must not defend those who were not selected. Finally, Gato explains the third condition, which is to be healthy and able to procreate. With that, a new question arises about what will happen to the unqualified. Sinka answers with a serious face, saying they have committed a crime and deserve to die. She then raises her finger and asks what should be done with these people. With a crazy look in her eyes, she answers her own question, saying they should simply be executed. Then Sinka screams with all her might that all of them will be executed without exception. It's explained that next month they will choose the neo-humans and send out the invitations. But Sinka warns that anyone who refuses will be seen as a traitor and will also be executed. She clasps her hands and wishes for the new neo-humans to be forever glorified. To finish, she winks at the camera and says goodbye, ending the broadcast. The scene returns to the girl who is still there listening to the little pink creature. Suddenly, a blue flash interrupts everything as if the connection was lost. Then, the scene changes to a meeting room where several figures are seated. Someone seems to agree with what was discussed, starting the serious conversation. They begin to talk about the prison break and the broadcast the whole world saw. A man is introduced as Bees, the world president, talking about the WSC. He then begins the World Security Council meeting to discuss the problems. On the screen, they analyze Sinka's data, showing the danger she represents. Someone asks if she's on the villain list, but the Hero Association denied it. One of the members is outraged as this happens right after the deaths of other heroes. But before they decide what to do, one of them asks for a moment to say something else. He says they need to clarify some important points before continuing the meeting. Then a man named Einheit accuses director Jo Seyoon of giving power to criminals. He yells that she caused enormous chaos by giving someone the right of execution. But another person defends the director, saying she made the best possible decision. This man is Authority, who states with certainty that he would have done the same thing in her place. Einheit insists she should have reported it, but Authority says she couldn't waste time. He then stares at another member of the meeting and asks if he doesn't agree. The question is for El Hayato, the Minister of Justice, who listens attentively. He replies that despite everything, he thinks it's wrong to give one individual so much power. He continues saying he understands the situation was unique and it was a difficult decision. Then Commissioner Boda expresses his concern, fearing the people will suffer greatly. But Commissioner Crumb counters, saying the people are already suffering from the lack of security. At this, Vice Minister Guerra questions if they should already consider this a real war. Utteriti slams the table in anger, saying he already told them they should all be killed. He accuses the others of getting into this situation by delaying the executions. With hatred, he shouts that in his day, captured criminals would have died on the spot. Utteriti also complains that ever since Rausa became the association's president, the world has gone to crap. Boda then comments that Authority hasn't changed one bit over time. Einheit jumps into the fight, saying Authority's past actions were also wrong. He further accuses Authority, stating that most of the heroes he led were crazy. El Giotto defends himself, saying it was better to have them as heroes than as villains. Utterty shouts back that because of Rauza, many heroes became villains. With a serious look, Boda states that Utterty's idea of a hero is different from his. He finishes by saying, everyone there is so obsessed, they can't see reality. President Bazi then says Rauza's name, pensive about the current situation. He then wonders what Rauza would have said if she were present, but her chair is empty as the position of leader of the Hero Association is vacant. Utterty remains silent, but his angry face says everything he's thinking. The scene changes, and Utorotai is leaving when someone asks if the meeting was good, and he says no. Inside the car, he complains that they just need to kill everyone and get it over with. He blames everything on Rauza, and his driver asks what he's going to do. It's explained to us that after Rauza became president, the council members were divided. There was the pro-correction group, which was the faction with more people on her side. Then came the pro-punishment group, which was Utority and Crumb's crew. And finally, there was the neutral party, which was just the Minister of Justice, El Giotto. Utterity complains that they were always ignored as it was 4 against 2 on the council. But now that the position is vacant, he just needs to place one of his allies there. With that, the balance would be an even 3 against 3, and they would be heard. Utorotai continues his explanation, saying that's exactly why they need to act. He reveals his plan is to go meet the former hero of equality, Seo Gangyu. But he is sure that elsewhere, other people are also making their moves. The scene changes, and we see Lippis sitting, seemingly in the middle of a serious conversation. Back in the car, the assistant asks if Gangyu wasn't very close to Ryausa. With a sinister smile, Uterly replies that the situation has changed a lot. He then gives the order to the driver to head to their meeting with Seo Gangyu. Gangyu is being treated by doctors as he suffered a lot of damage in the last fight. In his memories, Gangyu recalls a monk who claimed to have the same doubt as him. Jiuji smiles and says he'll find the answer on his journey with equality. Hub refuses, saying he doesn't want to kill people with his own hands. He says that if he's forced to kill, he'd rather stop being a hero. Tomai explains that her sister is a criminal on death row. She believes that even if she deserves it, her sister should have a chance to repent for her crime. Mago then suggests thinking about it the other way around. Why should heroes kill? He questions the value of life and what it means to be human, inviting everyone to think together. Then Rauza says their job isn't to kill, but to save everyone. She then extends her hand to Gangyu, inviting him to save the world with them. But now, he faces their memorial and wonders why they all left without an answer. The scene returns to the present, and he says an inspector's job is to rehabilitate criminals. He explains he's not against the death penalty, but he has a duty to speak with them beforehand. Gangyu states that the law judges people and inspectors just carry out the sentence. And that's why before the execution takes place, something needs to be done first. He continues, saying that an inspector's duty before an execution is suddenly the scene cuts to a wide-open eye filled with terror and despair. We then see Seo Gangyu standing alone in the middle of a strange rain of blood, and in front of him, a hand holds a bizarre and disgusting sphere of flesh. Sung Wan Huang appears with a sick smile, asking if he doesn't find it fascinating. He gets angry, saying this is why the world is such a mess. Right? Gangyu is in shock, completely horrified by the scene he's witnessing. The scene cuts and he wakes up with a jolt coming out of a terrible nightmare. He looks around, still panting and scared by the images he saw. Just then, he sees Lipis sitting in front of him, who tells him he's finally awake. She looks worried and asks if he's feeling okay after everything, but he's still in a cold sweat, clearly shaken by the memories of the nightmare. Lipis then starts to apologize, saying she's very sorry for what happened. She says she should have gone to help because she knew something had gone down at the prison, but the director hid the facts. And Gangyu just replies that it's fine, trying to hide his true feelings. He says she wouldn't have been able to help even if she had gone to the prison, but Lipis insists, asking if he's really okay after executing the criminals. Gangyu then takes a deep breath and prepares to finally open up to her. With a tired look, he admits that he's actually not okay with the situation at all. He gets angry and says he should have killed them all, but he couldn't do it at the moment. Lipis's eyes go wide, completely shocked by his confession. He then asks if she came to lecture him and tells her to leave because he's not a hero anymore. Gangyu reinforces that he's a prison inspector now, leaving Lipis speechless. But she explains that they need to form a new hero association for equality. Lipus says she's in the position temporarily and that they need a new hero to lead. Then she reveals the plan, saying they thought about choosing him for the president's position. He cuts her off immediately, repeating that he's no longer a hero and that it's their problem. Gang Yu warns that as soon as he's better, he's leaving to do what needs to be done. Just then, a deep voice echoes through the room and Utorotai appears at the door out of nowhere. He smiles and confirms, saying that now he is Inspector Seo Gangyu. Gangyu and Lipus are surprised, not understanding what authority is doing there. He says that Gangyu has suffered enough alone, but now he won't have to anymore. Authority reveals he's going to become president and use heroes in the executions, leaving Lipus shocked. Gangyu asks what he means, but Uterly announces he's going to quit his current position. He explains he's leaving so he can run in the election for president of the Hero Association. Then he says he came to see if Gangyu wanted the position, but now there's no need. Before leaving, he tells Lipus, the rabbit, to keep an eye on what's about to happen. Lipus is outraged and asks who in the world would vote for him for a position like that. With a smirk, Uterly replies that they'll just have to wait and see. She tries to talk to Gangyu again, but he simply says he's tired. With a very cold look, he asks them to please leave the room now. Lipus is speechless, processing what she heard before finally leaving. In the car, the assistant comments that many people besides them will be after Seo Gangyu. Utorotai reflects that the organizations have become too dependent on a single powerful person. He predicts the council will discuss whether or not Gangyu should have the right to execute. His assistant asks what he's going to do since Gangyu's actions are wrong. She waits there, somewhat unsure of what her boss's answer will be. The scene cuts back to the meeting where someone says that if that's what the law dictates, then they must punish the prison director. But another member questions the situation. Commissioner Crumb defends the director, saying she would have ignored what she did. But Einheit explodes with anger, yelling that this whole conversation is just a waste of time. He complains that no one there is offering a real solution, just spouting idealism. Outraged, Einheit yells that he already gave a suggestion to solve the problem. His idea was to use the firefighters and the army to contain the crisis, but Commissioner Crumb immediately denies it, saying the police never agreed to that. The plan was to bring everyone together to capture the criminals and let the law judge them. Authority finds the idea absurd and says that's a solution from someone living in a fantasy world. President Bazette then calls on Authority, wanting to hear what he thinks. He asks very directly what proposal Authority has then. With a confident smile, Utorotai simply suggests they hold a vote. The council members are surprised by the idea, wondering what kind of vote it would be. Utorotai then explains his plan, which is to let the entire nation vote on an issue. The vote would decide if Gangyu should have the right to execute, and thus they would change the law. The scene cuts to the city at night as the idea of a vote hangs in the air. Utterly agrees, saying that instead of arguing, a vote will make things clearer. He then taunts the council, reminding them that they all work for the citizens. But one member finds it dangerous, and Authority immediately retorts, accusing him of looking down on the people. Einheit gets irritated and says he knows exactly why the other is acting this way. He accuses Authority of being afraid, knowing he'll end up losing the vote. With a serious look, he asks if he's wrong about his intentions. The tension in the room rises, and everyone turns to the president waiting for a decision. The president closes his eyes and remains silent, thinking hard about what to do. After a while, he finally makes up his mind and authorizes the vote. 2 weeks pass, and a news anchor appears to announce the final results. She reveals that 88% are in agreement, an overwhelming victory for those in favor. Authority smiles, satisfied, commenting that this result was more than expected. The anchor then begins to explain the majority's reasoning for voting in favor. They believe this is a war and that the enemies are beasts who don't deserve the protection of the law. Utorotai smiles, saying that besides Gangyu, other heroes will also receive the authority to execute. The anchor then starts to talk about the opinion of the opposition, who were the minority in the vote. They think Gangyu is too emotional, and that giving him this power would be dangerous, and that giving this power to a single individual could cause the collapse of society. This is, in essence, the minority's view on the subject. Einheit explodes, shouting that it's all nonsense, refusing any attempt at reconciliation. Utorotai yells back, saying the result is clear and he doesn't understand their problem. But President Bazet interrupts the fight, ordering them both to stop arguing immediately. With a serious expression, he then orders them to bring Seo Gangyu to him. The scene changes, and an elegant man waits in a room, saying it's been a while. Gang Yu then appears in his uniform, and the man greets him by name. The man asks if he's heard the news, and Gang Yu confirms he has. With a curious look, the man then asks what his choice will be now. Gang Yu answers firmly that he will follow the vote's result and execute all of them. The man seems to accept his decision, but says he needs to ask just one more thing. The man then asks what he would have done if the vote had gone the other way. Gang Yu thinks for a moment, preparing to give a very honest answer. With hatred in his eyes, he says he would have killed them all and then turned himself in without hesitation. The man seems to agree, accepting his answer without any judgment. He then turns and says, "There's one more question that needs to be asked. The question is what Rauza would have done if she were here to handle the situation." Gang Yu is surprised by the question, and the man just silently observes his reaction. He then replies that for that answer, Gang Yu should ask Rauza herself. Gang Yu seems to reflect on this, looking out at the city skyline from the office window. But the man hasn't left yet, and says there's one last thing he needs to know. He wants to know if after everything, Gang Yu intends to be a hero again. Gang Yu looks away and honestly replies that he doesn't know the answer yet. The scene cuts to a newspaper reporting that a special law has been created for CO Gang Yu. We see several reporters, and it's explained that President Bazette has made a statement. He announces that he has given Officer Gang Yu the authority to execute the prison's criminals. President Bezet concludes by saying the law applies to this incident and any future terrorism. Utterati watches from his car saying that with this, things will go back to normal. Meanwhile, Lipus appears alone in a field, looking very thoughtful and sad. The scene cuts to someone watching the announcement while holding an urn with ashes. We see hands on the urn, which seems to contain the remains of someone very important. It's Officer Jia Hong mourning deeply for the death of her partner, Gang Ho Seo. Seeing the news, Sinka thinks it's time for her group to start preparing. She then asks if all her enforcers are finally ready for action. A group of powerful villains is shown, all lined up and waiting for her orders. And among them, Shang Wan Huang appears with his typical purely mocking smile. A short time later, the scene changes, taking us to Spain and also to Portugal. The world then hears news of a blue circle that appeared and delivered a letter. In the council meeting, they discover that the letter was actually an invitation. And the situation spreads with the same portal appearing to various people on the street. The crowd looks up completely shocked to see the portal floating over the city. Suddenly, a green magic symbol appears inside the portal, changing its color. Then, a giant explosion erupts in the middle of the street, throwing everyone back. A Swede observes the destruction, impressed by the power of the attack he unleashed. Then, his group emerges from the portal and Ho comments that the explosion was very intense. Morris argues with him, but a Swede warns that the weak have no right to join them. The scene cuts, and a cute creature appears on a building's large screen, drawing attention. The little creature waves to the crowd who don't understand what's happening, but then the image changes to Sinka, who introduces herself to everyone watching. The World Council watches the broadcast, and she warns that something is about to happen. With a sinister look, she points forward and announces that the execution will begin. She explains that the execution is for all those who were not genetically selected. Several villains are shown, all with malicious looks, ready for action. The scene ends with Gang Yu, who adjusts his cap, prepared to spring into action. A news anchor begins to explain the situation using data from the Hero Association. Then we're introduced to a Swede, a very dangerous summoner-type villain. It's explained that he was captured by the hero Mago, a very strong opponent. His power is to steal an enemy's ability, engraving it as a tattoo on his body. He then uses his power to cause a huge explosion right in the middle of the city. But he isn't satisfied, thinking the attack was too weak and inefficient. A Sword laments that he should have stolen Mago's attack ability instead. Next, we meet Ho, a physical-type villain who was captured by another hero. The hero who caught her was known as Jujay, a combat specialist. Ho can transform into a demon fox, and she seems to really enjoy the slaughter. With blood on her hands, she wonders who could finally tame her. The next is Hyun Ju Young, a special-type villain caught by the hero Hub. His power is to summon demons, and he calls a bizarre creature named Shiji to attack. The monster he summons is giant and destroys everything, dismembering people on the street. He then stands beside Ho commenting on how powerful she is. Now we meet Morris, a special-type villain captured by the heroine Tamai. She finds a man scream very loud as he begs for help on the ground. Morris then says that Eva was right and uses her power to attack the man. The guy screams in pain, feeling his body being consumed by a strange energy. With a cold gaze, she says the Unchosen are inferior from birth. Back at the council, they mobilize the heroes, but authority thinks it's useless if they aren't going to kill. President Bazette makes up his mind and says that in that case, he will take action. He orders the firefighters to prioritize rescuing all civilians in danger. Then, the army and police receive orders to protect the people even without the power to fight back. The president then asks El Queleta where Officer Seo Gongyu is right now. He replies that Director Joe reported that Gongyu already headed there after seeing the broadcast. One of the members asks if there's a way to find out what the enemies want, but the assistant informs them that they still don't know the true objective of the attack. The scene cuts to Sinka, who explains with a smile what everyone's mission is. The objective is to execute the Unchosen and help the guests get to the Alpha world. She continues, saying that in the beginning, they just need to give a taste of their power. Sinka explains that the priority now is to bring people to their side, not to execute them. With a wide smile, she says the Unchosen can be killed at any time. Back in the city, a survivor yells at them to stop all destruction. Hyun Ju-young says they've already warmed up and that Ho wanted to destroy more. But Aswada refuses to stop, saying he'll do whatever he wants. He believes that if he keeps destroying things, the special guests will show up soon. Morris gets angry and accuses him of ignoring orders, but he doesn't seem to care. Just then, another villain prepares to attack and summons the three-legged crow. A giant bird of fire appears flying through the skies and burning everything in its path. Ho gets excited and asks to join in, but Morris already knows it's no use. She warns that she'll tell Eva everything, but Aswade tells her to do whatever she wants. The city continues to be destroyed with buildings on fire and smoke everywhere. Seeing the mess, Aswade sighs and prepares to use one of his special powers. Aswade complains that even outside of prison, nothing has changed, finding it all very irritating. He's frustrated because his ability isn't getting any stronger, calling it a cursed talent. With a determined look, he realizes he needs to keep stealing others' powers. But suddenly, Lapis appears in the sky, swooping down with a powerful attack aimed at him. She summons a giant stuffed rabbit which descends glowing with red energy. Aswade creates a shield to defend himself, surprised to see who the attacker is. Lippy steps on his shield and says he hasn't changed a bit even after prison. Angrily, she asks if he learned absolutely nothing while he was locked up. He recognizes her and taunts her, asking if she gave Mago a decent burial. The scene then cuts to the Lisbon Academy of Abilities, a very important place. Inside, a teacher is giving a class to several students in a spacious room. One of the students raises his hand and tells the teacher he's very scared of the situation. But the teacher gives a smile, trying to calm the class and instill some confidence. He promises to protect everyone and asks them all to follow him to the shelter. Suddenly, a strange energy begins to glow in the teacher's hand, startling him. The teacher turns around and sees Morris sitting at a desk, sending the other students into a panic. With a sinister smile, she praises the teacher for his courage in protecting the students. The children start to scream and run, but the villain just finds their shouting irritating. He then recognizes Morris and prepares to fight to defend the whole class. She's surprised he knows her name, finding the situation a bit embarrassing. Morris informs him that he also received the invitation and tells the chosen ones to come with her. But the teacher stands in front of the children and yells that he won't hand anyone over. She then scoffs at his attitude, saying he isn't very smart. At that, the villain grips her umbrella tighter, preparing to attack. She gets irritated because he dared to interrupt her mid-sentence. The teacher doesn't back down and continues to face Morris with a look of determination. Angrily, she adjusts her hat and says she's going to teach him a lesson in manners. After the incident with the twins, Mago and Rauza created a special school to educate children with powers. In this place, heroes would teach the young how to integrate into society even with special abilities. And most importantly, they would learn to finally control all their power safely. The scene shifts to inside the academy, where the villain Morris tosses her hat into the air. She then activates her ability, and a power zone called the Good Manners Zone appears. Startled, the children and the teacher panic, not understanding what that giant thing was. But the villain just makes a shushing gesture, as if scolding everyone there. At that, gags appear on the children's mouths, forcing them to be quiet instantly. With everything silent, she floats smugly, revealing that the name of her power is etiquette. It's explained that this ability only affects those she considers inferior, allowing her to restrain or harm them. She then threatens to kill anyone who tries anything funny, showing how her power oppresses the weak. Morris then calls the 3 children who received invitations, ordering them to step forward. She reads from a paper saying the 3 are a special type and will help the queen create the world. The villain then pressures the frightened children, asking for their answer to her proposal. One of the boys then asks if she means the queen who appeared on TV, and she confirms it. Even though he thinks the queen is beautiful and has a perfect plan, the boy rejects the offer to her face. She's confused, and he explains that this so-called queen wants to kill everyone without powers. Outraged, he shouts that he knows many kids without powers and would never hurt them for anything. The other children agree, saying their parents don't have powers either and haven't done anything wrong. They remember their teacher teaching them not to hate those who are different and shout that she is a bad person. Morris then asks if they really don't want to join, and they all answer no in unison. Angrily, she simply tells them all to die and launches an attack that lifts the ground beneath them. Her power manifests as shards of glass about to pierce the children right there. But at the last second, the teacher steps in front of the children to protect them from the deadly attack. He survives the blow, revealing his power is to absorb the impact of special attacks, a true bodyguard. The villain is surprised and understands why Sinka invited him, as his ability is perfect for this. The teacher then stares at her seriously and warns her that they know everything about her past. He prepares to tell everything in front of the children, but she orders him to stop at once. Morris accuses the heroine Tamai of telling them everything, saying it's a lack of manners. But the teacher cuts her off, saying he isn't there to discuss his own past. A giant projection of Sinka appears, saying she is there on the queen's orders to select people. With a threatening look, Morris tells him to hand over the children if he wants to stay alive. But he grinds his teeth and firmly replies that, no, he will never give them up. She then asks why, questioning if his son is among them, but he denies it. Confused, Morris tries to understand his reason for risking his own life like this. He then faces her with determination and replies that he does it simply because he's a teacher. The scene changes, explaining that he belongs to the Hero Association and teaches at the Ability Academy. Although his defensive power is strong enough to withstand attacks from dangerous criminals, he was always considered a fifth-rate hero back when Utterty was the president. We see in a flashback Utterty questioning him, asking how long he's going to keep this up. The former president humiliates him, saying that punching bag heroes aren't needed in the association. But everything changed when the heroine Rausa took over as president of the Hero Association. She called him in for a talk and asked if he wanted to become a teacher at Academy. He thinks he's being fired, but she smiles and says she wants him to be both a teacher and a hero. Ryosu says she wants the best hero to teach the children, but he doesn't think he fits the bill. But Ryosu surprises him, saying there is no hero more incredible than him. With a smile, she calls him the hero of heroes, the one who protects his comrades with his life. The teacher is speechless, completely moved by the recognition she has shown him. Back in the present, Morris says she's just had a great idea to resolve the situation. She then suggests that he convince the children since they would surely listen to their teacher. He begins to speak, explaining to her that the world is undergoing great changes. With the emergence of powers and many wars, our society completely collapsed. And to stabilize everything again, he says that countless sacrifices were made along the way. Losing patience, she asks what that has to do with anything, and he says he's trying to explain. He warns that if the queen's madness becomes reality, society will plunge into chaos once again. She thinks it's just an excuse, but he corrects her, saying he does care about society. Confused, Morris doesn't understand why he would care about the fate of an imperfect world. He then reveals the reason, saying that chaos would create more children who have suffered like she did. The villain is shocked by this revelation as he protects the frightened students behind him. Completely furious, she screams, demanding to know what the hell he knows about her past. He reinforces the warning, shouting that, as he just said, we know everything about her. But she refuses to believe it, screaming with all her might that it's simply ridiculous. At this, the villain loses control and makes several pillars of energy crash down from the ceiling. She accuses him of talking about things he doesn't even understand as the destruction continues. Even while taking the damage, he warns that he's getting very irritated with the whole situation. With a look of pure hatred, she glares at everyone and says they are all going to die. But suddenly, a giant foot appears out of nowhere to crush her head. The impact is brutal, and the newcomer simply smashes the villain into the ground with a single stomp. The teacher and the children look up, shocked by the destruction and Bai who has just arrived. The narration then identifies the villain on the floor as the B3 level criminal, the one called Morris. But the arrival isn't playing around and continues to press her face against the floor. With his eyes glowing red, Gang Yuseo orders her to call that crazy woman right now. Pinned to the ground, Morris asks if he's referring to her queen with that insult. Gang Yu glares down at her, warning that the insult applies to her too without exception. Consumed by rage, she screams that he's an insolent bastard, completely losing her mind. She tries to use her power to break free, but he pins her to the ground with even more force. Suddenly, chains of red energy manifest out of nowhere, binding Gang Yu's body. She summons a giant guillotine, declaring that he will pay for all his sins right now. But unexpectedly, the guillotine's blade shatters into pieces, failing to function. Without a second thought, he snaps the chains and lands a devastating punch squarely on the villainous face. Witnessing the scene, the professor and the children stand frozen, their jaws dropping as they scream in shock. Gang Yu calls out to the professor, who responds instantly, still visibly shaken by the unfolding chaos. He gives the order to get the children out of there as fast as he possibly can. However, the professor warns that the villain's power is still active, and they can't escape. With a single punch, Gang Yu simply knocks Morris out and she collapses instantly. With her down, the power binding everyone finally dissipates completely. Her face battered, Mares lies unconscious on the ground, bleeding profusely. The professor and the children remain in shock now that her power has finally been deactivated. At that moment, Gang Yu orders them to run as far away as they can, and the professor agrees immediately. But before leaving, he grabs the villainess by the collar. Still unsatisfied with the situation, he lifts her up and warns her with a deadly serious look that he's only going to say this once more. With his eyes glowing with rage, he commands her to bring that woman to him right this instant. Suddenly, her eyes snap open with a bizarre smile as she activates something called Lady Mode. A zone of red energy expands, trapping the two of them alone inside a circle. Gang Yu just sighs, realizing things are about to get more complicated. Her appearance shifts, and she remarks that it's been a while since she last took on that form. Out of nowhere, two strange figures in top hats and mustaches appear behind Gang Yu, surrounding him. The two speak in unison, politely stating that ladies must always go first. She closes her umbrella, which transforms into a weapon and activates a new ability, Lady's Zone. With this, the umbrella creates a massive energy dome covering the entire combat area. Gang Yu seems thoroughly annoyed, lamenting that she had to come to him to settle things. She tells him he's out of luck and reveals her original appearance in Lady Mode. It is explained that while this mode is active, anyone who recognizes her as a lady also gains her powers. Much like the other, this is an ability that only functions to oppress the weak. That's why Morris knew from the start her ability wouldn't work. Not against Seo Gongyu, a man so fierce he can tear through even Sinka's dimensional abilities. Her only intention was simply to buy time, even knowing she would die there. She wanted to help the other criminals complete Sinka's mission, no matter the cost. Gang catches on to her stalling and notes she clearly has no intention of bringing the queen. But she laughs, saying she doesn't understand how he threw away the chance to be chosen by the queen. Losing his patience, Gang Yu begins to activate his power, sending her into a desperate panic as she begs him to wait. Thinking she can buy more time, she yells at the top of her lungs that she knows where the queen is hiding, but Gang Yu cuts her off instantly, stating he doesn't need that information from her. He explains he can simply take her body to a psychometry user to find out everything. The villainess is stunned, realizing that even if she dies, her sacrifice will be for nothing. She taunts him, asking what he plans to do and warning that not even the queen will spare him. Seeing his power surge, the villainess realizes she already knows what she has to do. With a determined look, she decides she must commit suicide to protect her queen. She needs to die without leaving a single trace, but he lunges forward to stop her plan. His power manifests as energy claws that stretch toward the villainess. But instead of grabbing her, he uses his power to pull Sinka herself from another dimension. With a smile, Sinka appears and remarks that it seems he's changed his mind about meeting her. Morris is driven to despair by the sight, screaming her queen's name in complete shock. She warns Sinka that the place is too dangerous and that she needs to leave right now. But Gang Yu enters full power mode, creating an energy barrier around them. Sinka notes that he hasn't changed his mind and even asks her servant if she's alright. Fully transformed, he glares at the two villains, ready to start the fight for real. He then warns that he will use every last drop of his strength to finish her off. Sinka finds the threat terrifying, but admits that for some reason, she doesn't feel angry. In fact, she likes his obsession and even wonders if this could be love. The three are trapped in the dimension with the villainess staring at Gang Yu's power from a distance. Sinka then orders Morris to take care of those who refuse the invitation while she handles things there. Although worried, the servant agrees, but still shouts for her queen, fearing for her safety. Just then, Gang Yu attacks the barrier with all his might, forcefully pushing Sinka out of the dimension. With a smile on her face, she's thrown out, seeming to enjoy that display of strength. She then appears in a portal behind the children, announcing she's a little late for the party. On the other side, a badly injured Morris appears, making the children scream in fear at the sight. The teacher acts quickly, telling everyone to get moving and escape as fast as possible. But Morris can barely stand, coughing up a lot of blood from her severe injuries. The children are in shock, and one of them seems to recognize the woman who just arrived. The little girl points at Sinka and shouts that she's the person from their school book. We see that Morris has a huge hole in her stomach, showing the damage from the attack. Sinka looks up, impressed, wondering if all that overkill was really necessary. The entire dimension starts to shatter, and she thinks it's a lot of power just for a start. But Gang warns her with a deadly glare that this place will be her tomb. Sinka recognizes his technique and says he must be in zero mode to use this power. With a mocking smile, she says she thinks he's trying a bit too hard. But Gang Yu just extends his hand, preparing to use his own ability. She defends herself with portals, commenting that his ability doesn't work on her. He remains still, surrounded by his red aura, unfazed by his enemy's power. With a smile, Sinka decides to call for backup, summoning her servants, Canis and Gato, to the fight. The two then appear out of nowhere, jumping into the dimension ready for the ongoing battle. But as soon as they arrive, they stand still, a bit confused by the situation they found. Canis then asks Sinka what's going on, questioning if the fight is too difficult. He suggests they focus on buying time, but she says that's not an option right now. Sinka then suggests they simply run away and even waves goodbye to Gang, but suddenly, she feels something strange in her hand and doesn't understand what's happening. Dark energy appears on her chest, and her servants are left speechless, completely confused. Gang Yu then clenches his fist and reveals the technique's name, the Dark Paradise Prison. It's explained that this place is a space created by Gang Yu's ability, the Dark Celestial Prison. In a previous fight, Sinka managed to get Shang Wan out of the prison because she was on the outside. But now that she's inside his space, she can't get out no matter what. With the prison activated, Gang Yu prepares to attack, enveloping his fist in a sinister energy. His power expands, creating a giant containment sphere to trap the three villains. Her servants then look at her and call out for Sinka, worried about the situation they're in. Canis then tells her she needs to release their collars so they can fight seriously. She hesitates as she promised Shang Wan he would kill Gang Yu, but the servant insists it's necessary. Sinka then makes up her mind, believing Shang Wan will understand the situation when he finds out. She agrees to remove the collars and her servants prepare to unleash their full power. But at that exact moment, the two servants' eyes glow in a strange and terrifying way. Out of nowhere, they start screaming in pain as if they're being from the inside. Not understanding a thing, Sinka asks what's happening, sensing something is wrong. The camera focuses on the prison, showing that Gang Yu's own ability is causing all this suffering. He then turns to them and says he is simply peerless in the entire world. The villains are terrified by the pressure, not understanding the source of such confidence. Gang Yu explains that no one in the world can rival him no matter how many enemies come. Because the moment someone makes him an enemy, that person makes the entire world their enemy. With a smirk, he says that's exactly what it means to be peerless. He then faces Sinka and asks what she thinks of his little demonstration of power. But suddenly, the scene cuts to Kingston sitting calmly inside the prison. Kingston stares back at them and asks if he doesn't want to become truly peerless. Gang Yu is a bit confused, not understanding where this guy came from or what he's talking about. Kingston then explains that he is strong, but he's not yet peerless in the world. With a confident smile, he makes a proposal, saying he can make him the strongest of all. Sinka gets angry and shouts, asking what kind of nonsense this is and if the old man has gone crazy. She keeps cursing, but Kingston moves toward her with a powerful punch. He then readies a punch with a powerful aura, showing he's not messing around. And with one blow, he sends her flying, warning that women shouldn't interrupt men. The servants are shocked, and Sinka, full of hatred, tells the old man to just get lost. But in that same instant, her eyes glow, and she feels a strange power affecting her. Suddenly, servants run desperately to her aid. She looks at her hand, spitting blood, and starts cursing the damn old man who attacked her. With hatred in her eyes, she screams that he's nothing but a useless dying old man. But he laughs and mocks her, saying that for a wretch like her, even standing is impossible. Filled with hatred, she screams for the old man to go to hell and attacks with everything she's got. A gigantic beam of purple energy flies towards him, ready to disintegrate him. The attack hits him head-on, and the explosion of power illuminates the entire dark dimension. Even after the hit, she keeps cursing him, saying he's almost dead. But Kingston appears behind her and praises her, saying she has a powerful ability. He even comments that, at this level, she wouldn't even lose to the white-haired kid. Annoyed, Sinka tries to hit him with another energy beam, but he dodges it easily. Kingston then warns her that both she and the boy have a big problem in common. Suddenly, Kingston lands a powerful punch on Sinka. The mysterious attack leaves her injured and bleeding, thrown to the ground, completely confused. He then clenches his fist and explains that she believes so much in her own ability that she simply didn't bother to train the most important thing, her body. Sinka feels the pain from the blow, realizing he's right about it. He gets in her face and tells her he'll show her how his body is the real source of strength. Sinka then attacks with several portals, but the old man doesn't even move, taking it all head-on. The old man blinks in surprise. Canis lunges at him with a powerful kick, but Kingston manages to block the blow just in time. He even looks surprised, realizing the attack was stronger than he expected. He notes that, unlike their boss, the subordinates have trained their bodies well. Sinka then uses her telekinesis to lift them both, preparing a joint attack. We see the three of them teaming up, ready to launch a team attack against Kingston. From a distance, Gangyu just watches the fight, analyzing the power of everyone involved. Kingston admits he was a bit surprised by the appearance of someone unexpected. But after analyzing the scene, he quickly comes up with a plan and decides what to do. His plan is simple. He's going to join Kingston to fight the villains. And his main objective is one thing only: to finish that woman, Sinka, once and for all. The scene cuts to an office where a man in a suit is shocked by the news. It's confirmed to him that they received contact from Officer Seo Gangyu about the situation. They comment that Kingston has always been eccentric, and it seems he's found someone interesting. One of the men worries, questioning if Officer Seo might be in danger now. But the other reassures him, saying that although they don't know Kingston's strength, they know what he will do. He then says that Kingston won't be hostile, and that the person who will act unexpectedly is actually someone else, leaving a sense of suspense about who it could be. The scene cuts, taking us back to the moment the children and the professor were fleeing. Sinka was still there, and the little girl was talking about her being in the school book. Moray starts to laugh, finding it ridiculous that a school book would have information about her. She then glares at the professor with hatred and says that besides being ridiculous, it made her extremely angry, gritting her teeth with rage. But he explains that it's not just her and that all the criminals from Ruculus prison are documented. She asks if it's to mock the losers, but he denies it and says it's to understand them. A flashback begins, showing an officer meeting with Rauza and Mago after the Academy's creation. The officer approaches the two legendary heroes with a serious demeanor and an important proposal. He introduces himself as Seo Gong-ho, an officer from the famous maximum security prison, Ruculus. Gang-ho then suggests they add criminology as a mandatory subject for the students. Back in the present, Morris finds the idea of understanding her completely ridiculous and meaningless. She then taunts him, asking how he feels after reading about her entire past. But a voice cuts in, asking why he's trying to talk to a beast like her. The professor turns around and sees Authority, who says the professor hasn't changed a bit. With contempt, the old man states he should have fired him when he had the chance in the past. The professor recognizes him, and Authority tells the children that their education is all wrong. He then says he will teach what should have been taught and tells them to pay attention. Utterty begins the lesson saying that criminals don't become criminals because of their situation. He adjusts his tie, explaining that it's not their environment or society that corrupts them. According to him, emotional people try to create sympathy, blaming the world for everything bad that happens. With a crazed look, he shouts that criminals are the way they are simply because they were born that way. He calls them mutants of society, comparing them to cancerous tumors that must be removed. Utility rolls up his sleeve, reinforcing that these tumors need to be completely ripped out, and announces he's about to give them a little demonstration right now.